Chapter 1309. Wang Ling came to his senses, and his spirit returned to his body. His conversation with the bronze cat in the forsaken land of the gods had seemed very long, but in fact had only lasted for a moment. In front of him, Survival Heavenly Dao and the human form Loopy Toad were still producing death substitute talismans in an assembly line. This was Wang Ling's second layer of insurance after Lotus Sun had obtained the Buddha Golden Lotus. As for the forsaken land of the gods, the bronze cat's promise was the third layer. He didn't believe that with these 3 layers of insurance, the girl's soul would be snatched away by anyone. What did you see? Loopy Toad asked hurriedly when it saw that Wang Ling seemed blank for a moment. Wang Ling was usually relatively focused because he had to study seriously. Wang Ling, who loved to study, wouldn't become absent-minded in class. So if he was distracted, then there was only one possibility: his primordial spirit had left his body. After living with Wang Ling for so long, Loopy Toad felt that this level of understanding was already completely basic. The creature in the gray fog, Wang Ling said. What? Loopy Toad didn't understand. But Survival Heavenly Dao, who was writing the death substitute talisman, abruptly stopped when it heard these words. There was disbelief in its eyes. How did Jinren know? What on earth is the creature in the gray fog? Loopy Toad asked. This is taboo, I can't say. Survival Heavenly Dao trembled. Taboo? Loopy Toad laughed. Can this taboo be worth a few slaps from my little masterling? Survival Heavenly Dao was instantly stupefied when it heard this. It really didn't know how to answer this question. Survival Heavenly Dao hadn't experienced the power of the creature in the gray fog before. However, from the word of mouth of those gold men in Heavenly Court, it had a rough idea that this creature in the gray fog wasn't any weaker than the monks. For a very long time, Survival Heavenly Dao was lost in thought. He didn't know where Wang Ling had learned of the existence of this creature in the gray fog. But Survival Heavenly Dao had second thoughts. He felt that there was no harm in saying it. This creature in the gray fog was indeed terrifying, and Heavenly Court regarded it as a taboo. But the problem was that it was now in Ling Jinren's home. What place in the world could be safer than Ling Jinren's home? Furthermore, since Ling Jinren had mentioned the creature in the gray fog, it was likely that he was already prepared. Therefore, when he thought of this, Survival Heavenly Dao felt that it did not matter even if he said it out. This is a taboo existence. It wreaked havoc in the Heavenly Court a long time ago. Life Heavenly Dao said with fear in his eyes. Wreaking havoc in the Heavenly Court. Is this person related to Dao ancestor Wang? Loopy Toad asked. It had to be said that this question hit the mark. In this day and age, those who could wreak havoc in the Heavenly Court were naturally not easy to deal with. To give an inappropriate example, they were like those people who owed money but did not return it. They were essentially all big shots. I've never seen this gray fog creature before. It's said to be a divine beast reared by Dao ancestor Wang. No one has seen what it looks like, and all they know is that it has a pair of indestructible claws, said Survival Heavenly Dao. Then which one are you more afraid of, Lord Jinka's hand on your neck or the claws of this creature in the gray fog? Loopy Toad asked. This sole question made Survival Heavenly Dao's mouth twitch. That was a great question. It was like the question of who to save first when your girlfriend and your mother fell into the water at the same time. Whichever side you chose, you would die. Their Heavenly Dao was really too lowly. There was a trace of despair in Survival Heavenly Dao's eyes. Spiritual Master, please forgive me. I really don't know how to answer this question. But this creature in the gray fog is indeed terrifying, and may be the most powerful opponent Spiritual Master has ever encountered. Saying this, Survival Heavenly Dao imagined a particularly low probability possibility in its mind. In any case, both sides were demons. It would be better to let the demons fight each other. If they died together, wouldn't their Heavenly Court's peace be restored in the end? Wang Ling could read Survival Heavenly Dao's mind, and he was silent. He didn't know when his impression of Heavenly Dao had become that of a demon. Wang Ling didn't understand. Wasn't it just because he had put Jinke on Death Heavenly Dao's neck and questioned him? He had become a demon just like that. Furthermore, he had just been a little anxious at that time, and hadn't really intended to kill Death Heavenly Dao. At that moment, Wang Ling was reflecting. He was such an amiable person. He obediently abided by the Heavenly Dao's rules. If he really had any requests, he had paid the price for them in an equivalent exchange. Don't treat the village chief like a cadre. Expired crispy noodle snacks were still a delicacy, right? He couldn't bear to give it to ordinary people. In the end, this group of Heavenly Dao actually thought of him in such a way. They didn't know what was good for them. It served them right that the first season of the anime didn't appear. What is Ling Jinren thinking about? Seeing that Wang Ling was in a daze again, Heavenly Dao of Survival asked weakly. He was actually a little afraid that he had really offended Wang Ling. But Wang Ling was a generous person, and wouldn't fuss over so many things. Furthermore, in order to shake off the impression of him as a devil in the eyes of the Heavenly Dao, Wang Ling decided to go with the flow and do a good deed for the Heavenly Dao little golden men. Has no one seen what the gray fog creature looks like? Wang Ling asked telepathically at that moment. He looked at Survival Heavenly Dao and tried his best to maintain an amiable expression. Survival Heavenly Dao shivered at this stiff smile. Perfected One, please don't smile. It's a little scary. You look like you're crying when you smile. In the end, the Heavenly Dao of Survival didn't have the guts to say this in quotation marks. Wang Ling didn't care at all, and continued to ask telepathically, then, do you want to see? Survival Heavenly Dao was instantly stupefied at these words. See what? That creature in the gray fog? Yes. Wang Ling nodded. As soon as he said that, Survival Heavenly Dao had an extremely astonished expression on his face. Since ancient times, the creature in the gray fog had always been extremely mysterious, and no one had ever seen what it really looked like. This definitely wasn't just for show. At the same time, the pressure from the mystery hidden in the depths of the gray fog made everyone who knew of the creature's existence go silent out of fear, and their faces change color at the mere mention of it. There was always a fear of the unknown. What Wang Ling was doing now was to help the Heavenly Dao get rid of the creature's fear. Perfected One, this, my young master is asking you. Do you want to see it or not? Don't talk so much nonsense. Loopy Toad rolled its eyes. Survival Heavenly Dao gritted his teeth, and at that moment, he seemed to have made up his mind. I want to see it. Good. Wang Ling nodded. He opened his king's eye and surveyed the universe. When the power of the king's eye penetrated every corner of the universe, Wang Ling's line of sight finally caught sight of the creature hidden in the gray fog. With the power of the king's eye, the gray fog lingering around the creature in the gray fog was clearly gone. Wang Ling projected the creature's true form into the air above his bedroom. Through the layers of fog, Survival Heavenly Dao finally saw what the creature in the gray fog looked like. This is... Survival Heavenly Dao turned pale with fright. He never would have thought the creature in the gray fog should have looked like a high-end, imposing, and classy creature. Its true form was actually a groundhog. Chapter 13:10. Why was the creature in the gray fog a marmot? At that moment, the expression on Survival Heavenly Dao's face could only be described as marvelous. After all, the creature in the gray fog had always been an enigmatic existence in the eyes of Heavenly Dao, and Strength Heavenly Dao even called it the mysterious power hidden beneath the gray fog. Those claws, which were said to be indestructible, struck fear into the hearts of the Heavenly Dao golden men in the heavenly court. For example, Survival Heavenly Dao had imagined the creature in the gray fog countless times, that was Tao Ancestor Wang's divine beast. In its complete form, it was at least the size of a planet. Its every movement was filled with terrifying power that could destroy a planet. It stood on a 9-dragon coffin, wore a starry robe, and had hands like ancient blades that could cut down everything in the world. But now, this persona had completely collapsed. Marmot. Why was the mysterious creature in the gray fog this kind of creature that looked retarded and liked to make strange sounds? At that moment, Survival Heavenly Tao, who had learned the truth, had the urge to flip the table. But considering that this was Wang Ling's house, Survival Heavenly Tao restrained himself from courting death. Because this table had also been enlightened, he couldn't afford to provoke it at all. Furthermore, the enlightened gremlins of the Wang family were very united. If he casually flipped the table, he might be hung up and beaten. He didn't want to be teleported into Lord Ma's inner space to eat sh*t with the cosmic god tree. Mythological beasts are all born from chaos, so why is it a groundhog? Survival Heavenly Tao was bewildered. He felt like he had learned too big of a secret, and he didn't feel good at all. The reason is very simple. It might not be a marmot at all, but just a divine beast that looks very much like a marmot. This kind of probability is not impossible. At that moment, Book of Sage Immortal interjected once again. There are all kinds of divine beasts born from chaos. A lot of people think that the bigger they are, the more powerful they are, but that's not the case. What do you mean? Speak more clearly, Loopy Toad also asked. According to the data extrapolated from big data, the strength of a divine beast is determined by the primal chaos chi in its body. The more primal chaos chi it has, the stronger it is. Thus, a lot of people pursue large divine beasts, believing that the bigger the body, the more primal chaos chi it has in its body. Book of Sage Immortal said, in reality, the theory of body size is a complete misconception. The smaller the divine beast bred from a chaos egg, the more valuable it was, and the more powerful it was. Therefore, this marmot-like gray fog creature is actually a very rare marmot-like mythological beast. No nesting dolls. The corner of Loopy Toad's eye twitched. In any case, it looks no different from a marmot. I think we'll call it a marmot. I really didn't expect it to be like this. Survival Heavenly Tao was amazed, feeling that he had learned something new. On the other hand, he had obtained the answer to the true appearance of the creature in the gray fog. At the same time, it also meant that the other Heavenly Taos also knew about it. The information between the Heavenly Taos were all interconnected. There were no secrets. There's actually something that I don't quite understand. Since your 3000 Heavenly Tao can't stand this groundhog any longer, why don't you combine with it? Wouldn't it have been better to get rid of it earlier? Loopy Toad asked at that moment. In fact, this was also what Wang Ling wanted to ask. The Heavenly Tao of Survival couldn't help but sigh at the mention of the fusion of the Heavenly Tao. Heavenly Survival Heavenly Tao, back then, Tao Ancestor Wang divided us into 3000 parts to limit our power. At the same time, I've also set up a fusion restriction. Although we can fuse, there's a limit to the number. At most, we can fuse with 100 Heavenly Taos. Loopy Toad, 100 Heavenly Tao fusion, what level is that? Heavenly Survival Tao, a slap from Ling Zhenren won't kill you. Wang Ling and Loopy Toad, Survival Heavenly Tao, it's been a long time since the 3000 Heavenly Taos fused together. To us, this is no different from a fantasy story. Also, this restriction is very strange, even Ling Zhenren won't be able to break it so easily. Indeed. Wang Ling nodded secretly. In theory, his king's eye could break all restrictions, curses, unclean things, and so on, but for the time being, Wang Ling couldn't detect any restrictions on Survival Heavenly Tao. But he felt that it wasn't that he couldn't solve it, but that he still hadn't figured out this problem, which Tao Ancestor Wang had left behind. Removing the restriction was actually like solving a math problem. One needed to understand the problem type and find the right solution. Sometimes, it was necessary to reverse the entire calculation process. So as long as he found the specific method Dao ancestor Wang had set up the restriction back then, it would be very easy to reverse it. Those complicated restrictions couldn't be solved by simply chanting an incantation or setting up an array. Wang Ling realized that Dao ancestor Wang was a restriction maniac who really liked to lock down other people's authority. For example, the restriction to enter the unspeakable was another problem which Dao ancestor Wang had left behind. How does Ling Zhenren plan to deal with this creature in the gray fog? Survival Heavenly Dao asked. This was actually a very obscure question. Based on its understanding of Wang Ling, Survival Heavenly Dao now understood a little about Wang Ling's style of doing things. He wasn't the kind of person who would make the first move. And this was indeed the case. Even if Wang Ling had agreed to Bronze Cat's request and planned to deal with the creature in the gray fog, now, he still needed a reason to do so. The opportunity will come very soon, Wang Ling said indifferently to Survival Heavenly Dao telepathically at that moment. He had a premonition. He had a premonition that this groundhog would soon go to Heavenly Court to stir up trouble. As it turned out, Wang Ling's premonition was right on target. At the arrival of an uninvited guest in Heavenly Court, all the Heavenly Dao little golden men were terrified. The creature in the gray fog appeared in the conference hall of the Heavenly Dao Governing Committee. It pressed its sharp claws against Strength Heavenly Dao's neck, and its words were filled with an unquestionable threat. If you don't change the whitelist, I'll kill you. As Wang Ling had expected, the creature in the gray fog had indeed come to Heavenly Court to stir up trouble. It threatened the Heavenly Dao with its death, and demanded that the Heavenly Dao add the names of the heads of the Wu, Li, and Xing families to the whitelist. The remaining main Heavenly Dao in Heavenly Court felt deeply helpless in the face of this request. Strength Heavenly Dao's forehead was beaded with sweat. You should know that we don't have the right to decide on the whitelist. All the whitelist users are automatically selected after meeting Dao ancestors' criteria. I don't care. In short, you have to think of a way. The creature in the gray fog continued to threaten with its claws. Then just kill me. Strength Heavenly Dao refused to comply even to the death. The creature in the gray fog was a little stupefied, and didn't know why. He felt that there was something wrong with the Heavenly Dao today, and that it wasn't as afraid of him as it had been when he had come in the past. Are you sure you want to talk to me like this? The creature in the gray fog sneered. In the end, Strength Heavenly Dao stared at him neither humbly nor overbearingly. Give up. You stupid groundhog. What did you call me? The creature in the gray fog was alarmed. He had been hiding in the gray fog for so long. Why did someone know what he looked like? Ah! What the hell was going on? The creature in the gray fog roared inwardly. Chapter 13:11. Buried in the earth had always been troubled by one thing. Not only was his name uncouth, but even his appearance was identical to a groundhog's. This caused Buried in the earth to always have a low self-esteem. That was until he learned to use the chaotic power in his body to fuse with the gray fog in the air to hide his true form. Only then did he slowly regain his confidence. That's right, Buried in the earth. This was the name that the gray fog creature hated so much. Now, he gave himself a new name, Gray Mist Lord. Back then, Dao ancestor Wang had casually given him 3 names. Buried in the earth was relatively good. Dao ancestor Wang had originally planned to call him Buried in the earth or Buried in the earth, but the gray fog creature resolutely refused. He felt that his name should be more domineering. However, Dao ancestor Wang didn't seem to think that way. After Dao ancestor Wang gave birth to him, Buried in the earth gained Dao ancestor Wang's favor. He had thought that he was a combat-type mythological beast. However, Dao ancestor Wang seemed to only treat him as a mascot for fun when he was bored. He even launched a series of pig-raising plans for him. When he was just born, he was less than 5 kilograms. With Tao ancestor Wang's hard work, he managed to raise him to 5 kilograms. Thus, the gray fog creature had another name at that time, Tun 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 Tun. Think about it. Was there any mythological beast in this world that was more miserable than him? As a mythological beast that looked 99% similar to a groundhog, the groundhog felt that he was in extreme pain. All of this changed after Tao ancestor Wang entered the cycle of reincarnation. Using the gray fog to hide his identity, the groundhog began to establish a fierce persona for himself. He wasn't willing to be an ordinary groundhog anymore. Thus, he changed his name and began to be the mysterious creature hidden in the gray fog. Gray Mist Lord. For thousands of years, the groundhog worked hard to change his persona as a pet, shaping himself into a mysterious and ferocious creature shrouded in gray fog. He had wreaked havoc in the heavenly court and even harassed the forsaken land of the gods several times, leaving a deep impression on the Qing Tong cat and the heavenly Tao. And after the heavenly Tao Golden Man's continuous succession, the mystery he created became more and more outrageous, describing him as more and more terrifying. After an unknown number of years, the groundhog, the Gray Mist Lord. He finally changed his appearance and got rid of his identity as a divine beast pet. Now that the heavenly Tao's words had exposed his true colors, he was unable to accept this no matter what. Who is it? Who on earth revealed his true appearance? Gray Mist Lord was furious. Killing intent had already risen in his heart, and he wanted to kill all the heavenly Tao Golden Men who knew his true appearance. However, the Gray Mist Lord remained calm at the critical moment. He had endured for so many years, and it wasn't easy for him to change his appearance and hide his ugly appearance as a groundhog. If he endured for a little longer, it wouldn't be too late to ask these heavenly Tao who was the mastermind who had exposed his identity. I was too violent. This is indeed ungraceful. At this thought, Gray Mist Lord retracted his claws from Strength Heavenly Tao's neck. At the same time, he made the gray mist even thicker. He was exerting pressure on the surrounding Heavenly Tao. How about this? We can discuss the white list of the 3 domain of the gods' family heads later. At that moment, hidden in the mysterious Gray Mist Lord smiled slightly. I just need you to tell me who on earth is backing you up. If I know the answer today, I'll let it go. Otherwise, I won't let the heavenly court have peace today. As soon as he said this, the heavenly Tao in the main positions were speechless. Wasn't it obvious who was backing you up behind the scenes? You're just a divine beast by Tao ancestor Wang's side. Don't you know anything? You even went to the forsaken land of the gods and fished out the 3 domain of the gods' family heads. Logically speaking, there was no way they didn't know about Wang Ling's existence. Of course, after thinking it over, Strength Heavenly Tao suddenly understood. Because of the great shielding spell, the truth was that the 6 great Tao gods who had been crushed to death still didn't know Ling Jinren's true identity. And the most important thing was that these 6 people had died too quickly. Gray Mist Lord actually hadn't seen how they had died at all. It seems that this groundhog still doesn't know the truth. In the mental space, Strength Heavenly Tao couldn't help laughing. Also, this guy has a past record, he just wants to cause trouble. Space Heavenly Tao didn't know whether to laugh or cry. In the past, the groundhog had in fact forcibly gone to the forsaken land of the gods to bail out people, and then brought the little brothers he had bailed out to cause trouble everywhere. Relying on his strength, he thought he could stir up trouble in the forsaken land of the gods. Even the heavenly Tao had to obediently obey his orders. Hence, he had developed a condescending personality. For the groundhog, it didn't matter at all how these people had ended up in the forsaken land of the gods. Because as the boss, he had the ability to fish out everyone who had gone in. It was just that this time, the groundhog hadn't expected that the luxurious Titanic cruise ship he was driving was about to crash into a huge iceberg. What do you think? Everyone. Do you want to say it? Strength Heavenly Tao was actually still hesitant. This is a good opportunity. Time Heavenly Tao smiled at that moment. Ling Jinren is actually waiting for us to sell him out. As far as I know, that Qingtong cat in the Forsaken Land of the Gods just made a deal with Ling Jinren, but he doesn't have a reason to make a move yet. What do you mean? Just talking won't do, we have to provoke this groundhog. If he causes a ruckus, Ling Jinren will have a reason to deal with him. Got it. In the mental space, several of the main Heavenly Tao came up with a plan. Thus, they instantly understood how to deal with this groundhog in front of them. Grey Mist Lord, calm down. It's not that we don't want to say it. It's just that if we say it, we're afraid, AI. Strength Heavenly Tao said in a worried tone. Afraid of what? The groundhog was puzzled. That senior isn't easy to deal with. Strength Heavenly Tao said. Of course, he was saying this on purpose. Their current goal was to provoke this groundhog into taking the initiative to attack Wang Ling HM. In this world, other than the monk on Earth, who else can be my match? Who else can be my match? Of course. If it wasn't for the restriction left by Tao Ancestor on Earth, which damaged my strength, the monk would have to die if I ran into him somewhere else. The groundhog was very unconvinced. Hands on his hips, he said, say it. Who is this person? I'll destroy him. Senior, you can destroy him. That would truly be a great deed for our heavenly court. I believe that Tao Ancestor will be pleased to hear this. Strength Heavenly Tao said. It's just killing a person. If he's a real expert, I'll kill him for free. The groundhog sneered, its claws couldn't wait to kill the person whom Strength Heavenly Tao was talking about. This person actually dared to expose his identity, he wanted to gouge out this person's eyes. Dig out his heart. Then he would trap this person in his black fog for all eternity, and make him, Grey Mist Lord, his slave. Wang Ling, ? Chapter 13:12. This was a typical murder case caused by inferiority complex. In this era where appearance was everything, even mythological beasts might feel inferior, let alone human cultivators. According to the scientific statistics of the cultivation world, under the same lifespan, the income of a good-looking person would be 18% higher than that of an average-looking person. The Grey Mist Lord had been maintaining his ferocious image for many years, but he didn't expect it to be exposed by the king's eye one day, and his image completely collapsed. Ha! I won't take revenge for this. He vowed not to become a beast. Within the grey mist, the groundhog's voice sounded, I need your help with this. I need you to lure him out of Earth. He had already thought of a way to torture Wang Ling, however, if he chose to attack on Earth, it would affect his strength to a certain extent because of the restrictions left behind by the Tao Ancestor. Hence, the groundhog decided to fight somewhere other than Earth. Only in this way could his strength be fully displayed. You must be joking, Senior. How could we possibly have the ability to draw the attention of that being on Earth? Senior, you're very resourceful. As long as you launch an attack in the direction of Earth, I believe that being on Earth will respond quickly, said Strength Heavenly Tao. I see. The Grey Mist Lord nodded. He had also been enlightened by Strength Heavenly Law's words. It was all because of the restriction set up by the Tao Ancestor on Earth, so he had never been able to use his fists and kicks on Earth. Then he only needed to destroy the entire Earth. Wouldn't that solve the problem? The groundhog was ecstatic to see this. He regretted not having thought of this earlier. As long as Earth disappeared, then the last place in the universe that could restrict his strength would be completely gone. At that time, he would be able to do whatever he wanted. "I'll do it right away." The groundhog was extremely excited. His figure quickly disappeared into the gray fog. The gray fog seeped into space and formed a torrent, quickly bringing him to the moon and looking at Earth from afar. Then, he raised his claws and condensed the power of chaos from the gray mist. The wisps of chaotic power condensed into a purple-black magic ball at the tip of his claw. However, it was only the size of an egg. However, it hid an astonishing amount of power. As the chaotic magic ball materialized, large chunks of the surface of the moon began to crumble, and the explosive power of the chaotic magic ball caused the area where the groundhog was standing to cave in deeply. There was a loud bang. In an instant, a deep pit with a radius of over 1,000 miles was formed. The moon. This was the best sniping position and also the best cannon for launching chaos orbs. Due to the existence of the moon, this provided the groundhog with a huge recoil. This magic ball wasn't all of Grey Mist Lord's power. The power of chaos in him was 35%, which was more than 30% for ordinary divine beasts. This was also the main reason why groundhogs had always been able to do whatever they wanted. The chaos magic ball in his hand had only condensed 5% of its power. However, if he were to launch it, it would be more than enough to reach the Earth's core and detonate it. "Farewell, Earth." The groundhog chuckled coldly. He stretched out his hand and pointed. Another deafening rumble. The egg-sized chaos orb was instantly released from the tip of the claw. The massive recoil force caused the moon beneath the groundhog's feet to move back several hundred meters. The Earth was going to disappear. Once the forbidden area that could restrict him disappeared, no one would be able to restrict him anymore. The groundhog stood on the moon and admired his masterpiece from afar. After launching the chaos orb, it was heading toward Earth at the speed of light. Art was an explosion. He would be able to witness the destruction of this blue planet with his own eyes. This would definitely be a beautiful scene. If he were to succeed, perhaps only 2 people would be able to survive on this planet. One was that monk. The other was that detestable bastard who had discovered his true identity. Even if those 2 didn't die, they must have been severely injured by the impact of the chaos orb. If he could take advantage of this opportunity to get rid of those 2, then no one in this universe would be able to restrict him anymore. However, what the Grey Mist Lord didn't expect was, just as the chaos orb was about to reach Earth, a terrifying turn of events suddenly occurred. What's going on? The groundhog was puzzled. This was because he felt an indescribable pressure suddenly surging over his body. Soon, he discovered where this strange feeling was coming from. Shadow. The groundhog was shocked. To his surprise, he discovered that for some reason, the huge shadow on the dark side of the moon seemed to have been bestowed with a powerful spiritual nature and converged toward his feet. These shadows were like a tidal wave, flowing toward his feet from the dark side of the moon before converging to form a powerful quagmire. They grabbed onto him tightly. Then, they surged toward his body. Shadow binding technique. The groundhog was extremely astonished by this sudden development. Even the Heavenly Tao's great shadow technique didn't have this kind of ability, let alone a normal shadow binding technique. To think that it could control the entire shadow on the dark side of the moon to bind him in a short instant. These shadows crawled toward his feet before wrapping around his claws, forcefully controlling him to interrupt the chaos orb that was about to detonate the Earth. There's a ghost here. The groundhog turned pale with fright. This was the first time he had encountered such a situation. Could it be that this is also a type of great Tao? An existence that exists alongside the heavenly Tao. Soon, he thought of a possibility. This was the only explanation that could explain why there was an ability that could instantly control the power of the entire shadow on the dark side of the moon. At that moment, the groundhog spread out his gray fog. He hadn't expected this kind of sudden development, but it was still a little far-fetched to think that it could restrain him just like that. Although it wasn't easy to break free of the shadow's binding, this was mainly because this was the groundhog's first time encountering this type of great Tao power, and it was unfamiliar with it. Very quickly, he manipulated the gray fog around him to tear apart the shadow at his feet and around his body. He broke free of its binding and swiftly left the moon. Just as he was about to leave the area, the shadows that had surged up from the dark side of the moon instantly retreated and returned to their original positions. This was the first time he had encountered this type of great Tao power. But now, the groundhog was certain of one thing. This great Tao power came from the earth. Apart from the monk and that peeping dog, are there other experts? The groundhog stared in the direction of the earth, amused. That's my little sister. At that moment, a cold voice rang out in the groundhog's soul. A youngster appeared behind him. He was wearing casual red and white sportswear and had one hand in his pocket as he stared at the groundhog. In fact, the moment the groundhog launched the chaos orb, Wang Ling was already planning to make a move. But what he didn't expect was, he didn't know if it was because she had sensed that the earth was under threat. This actually activated Wang Wan's self-defense mechanism. This girl was clearly still in the belly, but she could actually control the shadow on the dark side of the moon. Then, she used the shadow to forcefully control the groundhog to interrupt the chaos orb. As expected of his little sister, Wan was amazing. Chapter 13:13. In the Wang family's small villa, Mother Wang, who was knitting a sweater, suddenly felt her stomach ache. She put down her tools and grabbed Father Wang's hand. It suddenly hurts. She's not going to give birth, is she? Father Wang was nervous. His heart ached when he saw Mother Wang sweat from the pain. Let's go to the hospital. But very quickly, Mother Wang shook her head. No need. The pain went away as quickly as it came. Mother Wang had already recovered, and her water hadn't broken yet. Overall, it wasn't a big deal. This kind of sudden pain usually happened in the past, but this time it seemed to be especially painful. It must be Wan being naughty again. Father Wang rubbed Mother Wang's belly and couldn't help laughing. Wan, be a little more obedient. Mom can't stand you being so naughty. I think Wan definitely has something important to do, Mother Wang said with a smile. A loving expression appeared on his face. Furthermore, I discovered that every time the pain subsided, my body would become even better. Have you noticed that I've become a lot stronger recently, and there are fewer fine lines on my face? A lot stronger. Father Wang was blank. Pregnancy could also have an awakening effect. Father Wang thought this was a little strange, but very quickly, he reacted. It can't be. Father Wang mumbled silently. No way, what? Mother Wang asked. Honey, wait for me. Father Wang immediately ran back to the study on the second floor, took down a device that looked like a blood pressure machine, and then put a bandage on Mother Wang's head. This is Realm Tester. This device can measure realms below the nascent soul stage, said Father Wang. As a Muggle couple who had been stuck at the body refinement stage all year round, Father Wang had in fact thought about when he would enter the cultivation path, so he looked forward to his awakening every day. There was one thing that needed to be emphasized here. Father Wang hoped that he could awaken himself, instead of relying on Wang Ling's strength. Soon, the results of the realm tester came out. Father Wang stared at the results on the dashboard and sucked in a cold breath. What on earth is going on? Mother Wang was baffled. Mom, you've reached the foundation establishment stage. Father Wang was completely stupefied. I've reached the foundation establishment stage. Mother Wang also turned pale with fright. Their spirit roots were so useless, yet they could still reach the foundation establishment stage. no wonder I said that my body is getting better and better recently. Mother Wang rubbed her belly and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. But it wasn't like this when I was pregnant with Ling Ling. Daughters and sons are different. My son is the China Construction Bank, and my daughter is the China Merchants Bank. That's how the spiritual energy of heaven and earth gathered for you and helped you build your foundation. Father Wang stared at the dashboard enviously. After a while, he looked at Mother Wang very seriously. Tell me, can I also get pregnant? Mother Wang, in space, near the moon, Wang Ling and Grey Mist Lord faced each other. To be honest, Grey Mist Lord's body was smaller than Wang Ling had imagined, but its physical density was indeed astonishing. Its small body possessed immense weight. And it was obvious that it was no longer 5 tons. It had been a very long time since Dao Father Wang had fed it. Even though the groundhog said that it hated the feeling of being treated as a pet, its body had already been transformed into a complete glutton after being fed all sorts of delicacies by Dao Father Wang. In the past few years, other than causing trouble in various places, what groundhogs do most is eat, eat, eat. As a result, their current weight was astonishing. Just like you, who had been fattening up at home during the epidemic. Your eyes are very interesting. They can actually see through my chaotic gray fog. At that moment, Grey Mist Lord stared at Wang Ling as he admired Wang Ling's king's eyes. Red eyes. When dusk power circulated, the entire pupil would be dyed gold and turn into lotus petals that spread out. Wang Ling had only unlocked less than 5% of his dusk power, but Grey Mist Lord already felt a strange sense of oppression. After all, even Monk Golden Lamp's dusk power. Grey Mist Lord wasn't weak at all. Apart from Dao Father Wang, there really weren't many people who could put pressure on him through their gazes. I can very clearly sense that you're definitely not the reincarnation of His Excellency Dao ancestor. Who on earth are you? The groundhog stared at Wang Ling, curious about Wang Ling's identity. Wang Ling's ears had already become calluses from hearing these lines. Why was it that before everyone fought him, they had to ask him who he was, where he came from, and who he was? He didn't even know who he was. Forget it, it was better to finish this fight as soon as possible. Wang Ling guessed that the Green Tong Cat in the Forsaken Land of the Gods was probably also watching this fight. The Green Tong Cat had long since grown impatient with teaching the groundhog a lesson. Thus, he had to complete his agreement with the Green Tong Cat as soon as possible. This way, Lotus Sun would have another layer of protection. Bzzzt. There was a muffled sound. Wang Ling disappeared into thin air in space. Shrinking ground to inches, Grey Mist Lord reacted quickly, and immediately increased the density of the chaotic gray fog to surround himself. The chaotic gray fog Daoist robe formed by the chaotic gray fog was a natural damage-reducing weapon. As long as the chaotic gray fog existed. In his heart, he was confident in the outcome of the battle. As long as he could use this ability flexibly, Grey Mist Lord was confident that he could even fight unscathed the entire time. This was Wang Ling's unadorned palm strike. There was nothing fancy about it, and it was just a simple knife hand strike. You want to hurt me with such an ordinary attack? Grey Mist Lord sneered in his heart. He hid in the chaotic gray fog and closed his eyes. He didn't care at all which direction Wang Ling would attack from, and was confident that he wouldn't be hurt. But in the next moment, there was a scream. It was a standard marmot squeal. Ah! Wang Ling's knife hand pierced through the chaotic gray fog with unerring accuracy and landed precisely on Grey Mist Lord's spine. In the blink of an eye, the groundhog looked like a meteor falling from the sky as it smashed into the surface of the moon, leaving behind a deep crater. It can actually pierce through the chaotic gray fog. The groundhog spat out a mouthful of blood and crawled out of the crater. It hadn't died in one blow again. Wang Ling raised his eyebrows. But this was also within Wang Ling's expectations. After all, this was a divine beast that Tao ancestor Wang had reared in captivity. If Wang Ling killed it in one blow, how humiliating would Tao ancestor Wang be? And most importantly, the groundhog thought that it had been injured because Wang Ling's knife hand had pierced through its chaotic gray fog. But the truth was that Wang Ling hadn't pierced through it. The chaotic gray fog around the gray mist lord did indeed have the effect of reducing damage. And there was no fancy reason why it had been injured now. It was purely because of Wang Ling's knife hand strike. The damage was really too high. I'm going to get serious, human. At that moment, the gray mist lord, who had crawled out of the crater, wiped the blood from the corner of its mouth. It increased the density of the chaotic gray fog once again. At the same time, it stretched out its claws at Wang Ling, which it claimed could cut through everything. Boom! The groundhog stomped hard on the ground and abruptly shot off the surface of the moon. In the end, 3 seconds later, there was yet another standard groundhog scream. Ah! Next to the pit that had just been formed, there was a second pit, not dead yet. At that moment, Wang Ling stared at the 2 deep craters on the surface of the moon, his palms smoking. This was a groundhog. It wasn't strong. The blood was really thick. Chapter 13-14. It could only be said that Grey Mist Lord's primal chaos fog was indeed very fierce. Objectively speaking, while Wang Ling's knife hand strike could cause explosive damage, as long as there was this primal chaos fog, Grey Mist Lord could reduce the damage by 75% at most. This was also the main reason why Grey Mist Lord was still able to stand up after being hit by Wang Ling twice in a row. He was injured, but not seriously injured, and this injury was far from fatal. What surprised Wang Ling even more was that, in addition to reducing damage, this primal chaos fog also had the ability to heal itself, which ignored the serious injury effect. The last person who had been so confident in his self-healing ability was President Bai. Unfortunately, President Bai hadn't taken into account the serious injury effect attached to each of Wang Ling's ordinary attacks. As a result, he hadn't been able to recover from his injuries before he died, and now, the marmot had fully demonstrated the professionalism that a qualified meat shield should have. It wasn't even afraid of being seriously injured. Even if it was severely injured, as long as there was the primal chaos fog, it could come back to life. It was indeed a troublesome guy. In space, Wang Ling stared at Grey Mist Lord as he climbed out of the second pit and pondered what to do. If he wanted to kill this marmot, he had to think of a way to get rid of this primal chaos fog. But looking at the current situation, Wang Ling hadn't thought of a suitable way. Because it was as if this primal chaos fog had already become one with the marmot. It had become an inseparable existence. Because it has been hiding in the fog for so long, does it think of itself as an organ of the marmot? Wang Ling guessed. Elsewhere, Grey Mist Lord was very depressed after climbing out of the second pit. The second slap in the face had come too suddenly. He even wondered if he had gotten the wrong script. As the number 1 divine beast under Tao ancestor Wang, he had never been beaten up so unilaterally. Not even that monk Golden Lamp had been able to take such a beating. Rumble, there was a violent tremor on the surface of the moon. Grey Mist Lord sprang to his feet again and aimed his sharp claws in Wang Ling's direction. Again. Wang Ling didn't believe that the marmot would play the same trick again. At this distance, no matter how fast the marmot was, Wang Ling would be able to swat it back like a fly. A third crater was about to appear on the surface of the moon. When the Grey Mist Lord flew into the air, his sharp claws tore open a space, and his body turned into light particles, quickly disappearing into the void. Did it disappear halfway through? No, Wang Ling realized that this groundhog really wanted to burrow into his spiritual space. This was truly an omnipotent claw. It could even tear through the barrier leading to the spiritual space. This could be considered a miscalculation. He didn't expect groundhogs to have this ability. This caused him to be careless for a moment. But what could he do even if he was in his spiritual space? In Wang Ling's opinion, this marmot was just courting death. A normal cultivator's mental space is very narrow. The range of an almighty's spiritual space naturally went without saying. Take the monk for example. The spiritual world of the monk was about the size of a solar system. But Wang Ling's spiritual space, after the Grey Mist Lord entered, he felt completely dumbfounded. This was because he realized that he had just left a real universe and entered another spiritual universe, F***CK. This was the freaking spiritual space of a human being. Are you ready to die? A cold voice rang out in the universe of Wang Ling's spiritual space. The voice seemed to be the very essence of this universe. Layer upon layer, it had a terrifying echo, like a prehistoric death knell. It surged in from all directions. A familiar white-haired figure appeared, formed from countless specks of light. As always, he appeared like a deity descending to the mortal world. Wang Ying's figure appeared in front of the Grey Mist Lord, his eyes overbearing and insufferably arrogant. "You're this person's shadow," the Grey Mist Lord said gloomily. He sensed it. This person's aura was the same as that of the huge shadow that had risen up on the dark side of the moon earlier. It came from the same great Tao. The marmot was astonished. Although they had only met face to face for a moment, he could sense that the shadow in front of him was extremely strong. His figure was a mixture of reality and illusion, as if he had melded into this spiritual world constructed from the sea of stars, and was indistinct and invisible. His cold, obsidian eyes were sharp, and even without the support of the king's eye, they were still extremely intimidating. Gray light flickered on the marmot's body as he increased the protection of the chaotic gray mist once again. Now, the chaotic gray mist had already reduced the damage by 50%, and it had completely enveloped him. The marmot never thought that he would one day be able to increase the chaotic gray mist to 50%. Because there was only so much chaotic power in his body. 50% of the chaotic gray mist meant that the vast majority of the chaotic power in his body had been allocated to this chaotic gray mist. The damage reduction effect had increased, but at the same time, because of the distribution of the chaotic power in his body, the damage dealt would also be weakened. So you're relying on this gray robe to do whatever you want. Wang Ying's gaze became colder and colder. Under this threatening gaze, the Grey Mist Lord finally couldn't take it anymore. Don't be too arrogant. When the Tao ancestor gave birth to me, you weren't even deoxyribonuclease. The marmot moved. Enhanced by the gray mist, he stretched out his sharp claws and clawed at Wang Ying. The air in front of him distorted, and an invisible wave of chaos spread out to imprison Wang Ying. At the same time, the gray mist around his body transformed into a pair of wings, turning him into a flying groundhog. With a flap of his divine wings, the ground shrank to inches. Countless stars were swept into the storm, and then torn to pieces by the strong winds. The marmot flapped his wings and stretched out his claws as he tried to tear Wang Ying's body apart. Wang Ying couldn't be bothered to dodge at all. When the claws hit his brain, they directly passed through his body. They didn't cause him any damage. What a stupid marmot. How could it attack Shadow so heavily? Wang Ying's eyes were cold. He had already seen through everything. This chaotic gray mist was indeed the key. Furthermore, this chaotic gray mist was actually a little similar to him. It was also something that was intangible and didn't have a physical body. Then, as long as he could destroy this chaotic gray mist, this marmot would be very easy to deal with. You actually chose to come to Wang Ling's mental space. You really have a death wish. At that moment, Wang Ying had already thought of a way to deal with the chaotic gray mist. He stared at the terrified marmot in front of him with a kind expression. Chapter 13-15. The next moment. There was a tremendous fluctuation in Wang Ling's spiritual space. Wang Ying's body disintegrated into a black hole which swallowed the marmot. This was Shadow Howl. It was even larger than the one which Wang Ying had used to deal with the hollow spirit that had broken in. Boundless darkness directly surrounded him from every corner of the spiritual space. Grey Mist Lord quickly flapped his wings to retreat. He could sense the terrifying energy in the space around him. In that instant, all his hair stood on end, and he flapped his wings made of chaotic grey mist to flee into the distance. At the moment when he fled, a terrifying shadow rope attacked from a crafty angle and struck his afterimage, causing a terrifying energy fluctuation to erupt. Since you're here, there's no way I'll let you escape. Wang Ying's expression was calm, as if he was talking about something very ordinary. He manipulated countless shadows to chase after him. The moment these shadows lunged at him, they transformed into all kinds of shadow beasts. Those shadow lions, shadow dragons, and shadow. They covered the sky and covered the earth as they charged forward, trampling over the space and causing it to collapse. Grey Mist Lord had never thought that one day he would actually become a street rat that would be beaten everywhere he went. He threw his head back and howled, "Ah!" With this authentic marmot roar, he knew that he couldn't control the situation in front of him, he could only fight. As the number one divine beast under the Tao ancestor, he didn't want to be in such a sorry state and let a shadow act so arrogantly in front of him. The marmot's heart was filled with hope. In the next moment, his entire body glowed brightly as he raised the density of the grey mist to 75%. With his most powerful damage-reducing shield, he charged recklessly at Wang Ying. "Die here." Wang Ying stretched out his hand and manipulated the Shadow Howl giant wave to swallow up Grey Mist Lord. In the end, he suddenly clenched his hand. All the shadows were instantly wrapped up and compressed until they formed a shadow ball the size of a basketball. Grey Mist Lord was trapped in the shadow ball and was being attacked by the shadows. Every second he stayed in the shadow ball was equivalent to being injured by one of Wang Ling's palms. In a normal situation, the moment he was wrapped up, he should have already lost all signs of life. After all, there were very few people in the world who could withstand one of Wang Ling's palms. However, what surprised Wang Ying was that the groundhog was still alive. The chaos grey mist is so powerful. Wang Ying was slightly surprised. 3 seconds later, a corner of his shadow sphere protruded. In a situation visible to the naked eye, this corner was getting taller and taller. Chee! Another second passed. The groundhog successfully broke free from the shadow ball's restriction, its face swollen and bruised. His entire body was covered in blood, and it was obvious that his injuries were not light. However, this time, he still survived, Wang Ying exclaimed in her heart. The chaos fog that reduced 75% damage was indeed terrifying. To think that the groundhog was able to escape from the shadow ball formed by the shadow howl. Although he was beaten black and blue all over. But to be able to come out alive was already very impressive. "You've trapped me here. How dare you? Go out and fight if you dare." Grey Mist King roared. Wang Ying rubbed her ears. It was clearly the marmot that had come in on its own, but in the end, it had pushed the blame onto him and Wang Ling. "You're just trying your best. It's useless even if you get out." Wang Ying shook her head. It was true that the groundhog wasn't dead. But Wang Ying had already achieved his goal. In order to escape from the shadow ball, the groundhog had used up most of its power of chaos, which had greatly weakened the defense of the chaos grey mist. There was no more 75% damage reduction. Even if the groundhog went all out, it could only reduce the damage by 20%. Whether it was Wang Ying or Wang Ling, if they were just a little more serious, the groundhog would instantly be reduced to ashes. In the next moment, Wang Ying raised his hand. He was ready to give the groundhog the final blow. "Just you wait." Grey Mist King bellowed. He was afraid that Wang Ying would use the shadow howl again. So, it used its sharp claws to dig a tunnel and escape from Wang Ling's mental space once more. "You're leaving just like that?" Wang Ying laughed inwardly. "Why didn't you kill it?" asked Wang Ling. He knew that Wang Ying had always been a decisive person. Thus, the two of them had a simple exchange. "It's just a stupid groundhog. I thought it might be useful to keep it. But I already promised Qingtong Cat. Don't worry, it won't die so easily." "I see." Wang Ling was enlightened. In the real universe, the groundhog successfully escaped. It had wanted to avoid a direct collision with Wang Ling, and instead sneak into his mental space to directly destroy it. Who knew that it would ruin a moment of solitude? There was a great Buddha waiting for it in this mental space. Such a pathetic scene made Grey Mist King feel a deep sense of helplessness. He had no choice but to retreat. But what the groundhog didn't expect was waiting for him. This was Wang Ling's serious palm strike, which he had been waiting for a long time. Finally willing to come out. Wang Ling's voice was cold. Hearing this devilish voice, the groundhog shivered all over. Boom! Wang Ling raised his hand and his palm landed on the groundhog's back. An unprecedentedly powerful fluctuation was generated. There were no unnecessary movements. He struck out with his palm. The sky was filled with heavenly Tao runes. Space shattered layer by layer, carrying the destructive power of the Golden Man. The groundhog was directly struck from the front of the moon to the shadow of the dark side. Hua! Grey Mist King spat out a mouthful of blood and screamed in pain. His face was contorted. Everything was as Wang Ying had said. After being surrounded by the shadow ball, the chaotic gray fog on its body was already extremely weak. It could no longer withstand the surging power of such a palm strike. Wang Ling's palm. It pierced the groundhog's body from the front to the dark side of the moon. Under this astonishing destructive power, its entire body had already been shattered into pieces. Finally, there was a bang. Grey Mist King's body disintegrated and exploded into pieces on the spot. It's finally dead. Including the damage in the mental space. The groundhog had taken a total of 7 palm strikes. In Wang Ling's opinion, this was already an excellent result. But Wang Ling didn't leave. Because Wang Ying's words had reminded him just now. The groundhog was the #1 divine beast under Tao ancestor Wang. Furthermore, since its strength surpassed that of a Tao god, it definitely had certain privileges. Sure enough, everything was as he had expected. Wang Ling saw that Grey Mist King, who he had smashed to death on the dark side of the moon. Its body was actually gathering bit by bit at a speed visible to the naked eye. The groundhog also had the privilege of being resurrected in the forsaken land of the gods. Furthermore, this resurrection probably came at no cost, and didn't need the Qingtong Cat's permission. From this point of view, it was easy to imagine how much Tao ancestor Wang doted on the groundhog. The Qingtong Cat hated this groundhog to the bone. No matter how much cultivation the groundhog sacrificed, it wouldn't let it go. But Wang Ling judged. There was a limit to the number of times this kind of resurrection could be done without any cost. There was no way it could be resurrected infinitely. Ha ha ha. You didn't expect me to be back, did you? On the dark side of the moon, the resurrected groundhog was exceptionally arrogant. It had been resurrected at full strength, and even the chaotic gray mist on its body had been restored to its original state. It stared at Wang Ling, stretched out its sharp claws, and roared at the sky. You peeping dog, it won't be that easy to kill me. As soon as it said that, the shadow on the dark side of the moon violently rebelled again. The terrifying shadow gathered into a whirlpool that spiraled under the groundhog's feet. Like a bottomless black hole, that terrible power swallowed the groundhog's body along its feet. On one, Wang Ling looked in the direction of Earth, his heart stirred. He already understood what she meant. Wang Wan wanted to play along with him. Let's have a mixed doubles match between brother and sister. Chapter 13-16. Wang Ling didn't know why a perfectly good groundhog had to court death. And to his surprise, he discovered that his unborn sister seemed to have an older brother complex attribute. After all, Wan only went berserk after hearing what the groundhog said. At that moment, Wang Ling felt exceptionally melancholic. First, the younger brother controlled Wang Xiao Air, then the older brother controlled Wang On Wan. The Wang family's DNA was really amazing. To be able to cause a shadow riot on the far side of the moon from such a long distance, only the creator of Shadow Dao could do it so skillfully. Although he had learned Shadow Dao, it was true that he wasn't as proficient as his little sister. After all, this was something On Wan had learned since she was in her mother's womb, and there were many new functions that hadn't been released yet. Wang Ling had only learned the gist of it, and was far from grasping its essence. Learning the Great Tao and completely mastering the Great Tao were two different things. His sister was very strong. Wang Ling was delighted at this. When Wang Wan grew up, he might not lack opponents for practice. The groundhog was still struggling with all its might. He was completely restrained by Shadow Dao and tied to the dark side of the moon, unable to move. You siblings are really... Before it could even utter the word shameless, the groundhog's mouth was sealed by a shadow again. On Wan, good control. Wang Ling gave Wang Wan a high evaluation. Even though his sister wasn't born yet, it was obvious that she was a natural fighter. At that moment, Wang Ling sensed the tacit understanding between brother and sister. On Wan was the controller. He was a damage dealer. It was simply too convenient to work together. Now that this groundhog had come back to life, Wang Ling knew that he definitely wouldn't be able to kill it with an ordinary palm strike. Moreover, the gray fog on his body had also recovered to its peak. As such, he had to strike it repeatedly in order to kill it. Therefore, after considering all the circumstances, he started to build up his strength. Since the marmot was already under Wang Wan's control, Wang Ling had a lot of time. Buzz! Roughly 10 seconds later, a red light gushed out of his palm and covered his entire palm. God-destroying strike. To ensure that he could eliminate this groundhog, he used this palm technique for the first time. This was a palm strike condensed from the 3,000 Great Daos. When Wang Ling condensed it, the surrounding space shattered, and countless lightning bolts of divine punishment appeared in the surroundings, exploding wildly. Crap! In that instant, the groundhog's scalp began to crawl. This palm was extremely powerful. Even if he had the protection of the primal chaos fog, he might not be able to withstand it. He had to think of a way to break free. At this moment, the groundhog was racking its brains to think of a way to break free from the shadow seal. However, at this moment, he heard a faint sobbing sound coming from space. As he gathered strength, he searched for the source of the cry. He began to think it was the groundhog crying. It turned out that it wasn't. In the end, he found out that the owner of the voice was the spirit of the moon. The moon spirit wept in agony and was extremely scared. Ling Zhenren, I already have a lot of holes on the surface. I even got a puncture wound just now. With your palm, this marmot will be gone, but I'll also be gone. Hearing this, Wang Ling was slightly startled. This was a mistake on his part. He had forgotten about the spirit of the planet. Thus, Wang Ling raised his left hand again and casually pointed in the direction of the moon. With a hum, the entire moon lit up and abruptly turned into a massive red moon. Spirit of the moon, Ling Zhenren, what is this? This was the permanent enchantment spell. Wang Ling had used this move to strengthen the moon and turn it into a supermoon. Considering that he might have to drag some troublesome enemies out of Earth to fight later, Wang Ling felt that the surface of the moon seemed pretty suitable. So he used the permanent enchantment spell on the moon. It made the surface of the moon so that it wouldn't be easily destroyed by the strength of his palm. Of course. Bad, it might still be broken. But since it had already been enchanted, he could just repair it when he cleaned up the battlefield later. Although it had already been strengthened by Wang Ling, but as the spirit of the moon stared at Wang Ling, it still felt a little apprehensive. Boom! Wang Ling's god-destroying strike was aimed precisely at the back of the moon. Before the groundhog could cry out in alarm, the spirit of the moon had already cried out in alarm. Grey Mist Lord was furious. Why the hell are you shouting so loudly? Spirit of the moon, if you hit me, even if I don't break, it will still hurt. The enormous palm print covered an area of tens of thousands of hectares. Even the lines on the palm were instantly magnified infinitely, and that overwhelming destructive force smashed into the back of the moon. The groundhog was smashed to pieces once again. Under Wang Wan's powerful control, it couldn't break free at all. At the same time, in the Golden Buddha Lotus. Through Battlesec's satellite, the girls saw this unparalleled battle near the moon. Classmate Wang Ling is really awesome. Lotus Sun was astonished. Although she couldn't experience the atmosphere at the scene, based on the image alone, it was clear that the groundhog wasn't an easy enemy to deal with. I heard that this groundhog is a divine beast, and is stronger than any cultivator on Earth except Shifu, said Audjua. What about Senior Golden Lamp? Asked Lotus Sunday. I heard it was a draw. Audjua smiled. But once Shifu's younger sister is born, I'm afraid there will be one more person on Earth that this groundhog can't beat. I heard it before, classmate Wang Ling's younger sister. Lotus Sun said with a smile, I also have a younger sister. But actually, she's not related by blood. She's the only one who doesn't know. I've been wondering if I should tell her the truth. Whether they're related by blood or not, as long as their relationship is good enough, they're still good sisters. Junior Lotus Sun is so smart, I'm sure you'll find a good way to handle this, said Audjua when he heard this. I will. Lotus Sun nodded, and then suddenly asked, that's right, Senior Zhua. What do you think Sister Wang Wan will like? Audjua pondered for a bit, then quickly raised his head. Frozen dumplings. Frozen dumplings. Lotus Sun was very surprised by this answer. Are you sure it's not frozen dumplings with crispy noodle filling? I'm sure, it's just ordinary frozen dumplings. Audjua couldn't help laughing. Junior Lotus Sun should know better than I do what girls like. No. Lotus Sun shook her head firmly. Old Wang's DNA is too amazing, I really can't figure it out. Audjua. At that moment, Audjua snickered in his heart. As the saying went, why would you want a bicycle? He thought, junior sister Lotus Sun could send him over. Chapter 13-17. The groundhog was once again sent to the afterlife. Wang Ling stared at the huge palm print on the moon's surface, a little embarrassed. Even though the moon had already been strengthened by him, the destructive power of the God-Destroyer strike was immense, and the surface of the moon was still severely damaged. The groundhog was dead. Moon Spirit himself had also been slapped by Wang Ling, and he felt very aggrieved. Whoa. Ling Jinren, can you fix me? Wang Ling nodded affirmatively. The surface of the moon was originally full of potholes, and after the destruction of the war, it looked even more uneven and tragic. There was no other way. He raised his hand and prepared to use a heavenly Tao spell to repair the moon's surface. But the moon spirit had an ominous premonition. Wait! Ling Jinren. The Heaven's Path Divine Art you used. What kind of Heaven's Path Divine Art is it? Which one? Of course, it was Grand Repair, combined with the legendary Grand Skin Abrasion. First, he used Greater Repair to maintain the whole thing, and then he used Abrasion to remove the bumps and hollows on the surface of the moon. However, the principle of the Great Dermabrasion technique was a bit like peeling an apple. It would keep peeling until the surface of the moon became smooth. After hearing this, Moon Spirit's entire body turned sour. Don't. Ling Jinren, just fill in the deep hole on the surface. I don't think you need to grind the skin, you really don't need it. Wang Ling confirmed. No need. The Moon Spirit said resolutely. A faint look of disappointment appeared on Wang Ling's face. He was surprised to find out. The big sister moon mentioned in my childhood stories were all lies. This Moon Spirit was a proper, straight man. Only a straight man would not care about his pockmarked face. Then, his fingertips lit up with light. The light of Grand Repair illuminated the moon, restoring the handprints and pits that were caused in the battle earlier. It feels so good. What kind of spell was this? Shrouded in the light of the Great Repair spell, the Moon Spirit let out a strange cry. Halfway through the repairs, Wang Ling's expression suddenly changed. He didn't think he could be wrong. This was indeed the aura of that groundhog. I can actually be resurrected without paying a price. Wang Ling felt that this was incredible. However, the groundhog seemed to have taken a little longer on this occasion. Moreover, the resurrection location was not the same as the place where he had died. It was coming from Earth. Wang Ling quickly shifted his gaze. This groundhog actually went to Earth. But wasn't there a restriction left behind by the Tao ancestor on Earth? Wang Ling was puzzled. He didn't know what the groundhog was trying to do. However, this actually made things difficult for him. This was because he couldn't do what he did to the Moon Spirit and directly touch the Earth. Most importantly, if he wanted to kill the groundhog, he had to increase his damage to the same level as the God-slaying strike. It was fine for him to take a picture of the moon, but if he were to take a picture of the Earth, he was afraid that a group of innocent cultivators would suffer. He had to think of a way to move this troublesome groundhog somewhere else. There was no time to think. Wang Ling's figure flashed, and he disappeared in front of Moon Spirit. The Moon Spirit felt wronged. He wasn't done yet. This damned groundhog. Don't let me get my revenge, the Moon Spirit murmured angrily. The feeling of being interrupted in the midst of pleasure was something that only the person involved could understand. At that moment, the Grey Mist Lord appeared on Earth in full condition. He really had no other choice. He didn't want to be controlled as soon as he was resurrected, and then be beaten up and sent directly to the forsaken land of the gods. The Tao ancestor had indeed left him with the right to resurrect in full condition wasn't unlimited. Furthermore, he didn't have many chances left. The restriction left behind by the Tao ancestor on Earth would limit most of his strength. But it was precisely because of this restriction that the heavenly Tao wouldn't be able to track his location as long as he was on Earth. This restriction was a double-edged sword. At the same time that he appeared on Earth, he was able to produce a resonance response similar to a heavenly way signal blocker. Therefore, even though hiding on Earth would limit his strength, however, Earth was also a good place to hide. In short, that scary Earth youngster. He definitely wouldn't be able to beat him if he fought him in a normal way. The damage was too high. Even his chaotic gray mist wouldn't be able to withstand it. Thus, the extremely quick-witted Grey Mist Lord came up with a plan. He couldn't kill Wang Ling. But if he could find Wang Ling's weakness, for example, he could take something important from him and threaten him. Then, he could make this peeping dog commit suicide in front of him. Then, he could still win. This method might be a little sinister and ruthless. But as the saying goes, all's fair in war. As for his target, the Grey Mist Lord had already thought of it. When they had been fighting in space earlier. The Grey Mist Lord had actually noticed all along that a secret satellite from Earth had been remotely observing the contest between him and Wang Ling. He didn't need to think to know that the girl watching them through the satellite had to be a very important person. At that time, the Grey Mist Lord had already sent out his spiritual senses. And now, he was already in battle sect. Because he was moving so fast, almost no one had noticed him. The groundhog swiftly locked onto Lotus Sun's position. She's actually underground. After confirming the location, he was delighted. This was his home ground. In the underground cellar of Battle Sect. The girl was seriously considering the matter of bribery. She had her own experience in bribing her sister. When she was young, she had tried to get close to Sun Yu. She had given her sister a lot of gifts. However, the things that girls like are usually different. In general, in a family. Whether it was brother or sister or brother, they all had something in common when it came to what they liked. It's rare for junior sister Lotus Sun to show such a sad expression. Audra couldn't help laughing in his heart when he saw that the girl was thinking very hard about what gift to give her. First impressions are very important. Lotus Sun said seriously. But there's no hurry. After I'm resurrected, I'll have a lot of time to go on a field trip. As for the rules of improving favorability. Apart from Wang Ling, whom she had failed repeatedly, she was very confident in other people. As long as she did a little research, she would be able to find out what little sister Wang Yuan liked. Don't you have any doubts that Shifu really can't save you? Audra asked curiously. No. The girl smiled slightly and answered without hesitation. From the moment she had clearly sensed Wang Ling's true strength. Lotus Sun already understood in her heart. Perhaps there really was nothing in this world that classmate Wang Ling couldn't achieve. Perhaps the only person who could save her was classmate Wang Ling. But right at that moment, Audra suddenly sensed something unusual above his head. Senior Death Heavenly Tao, there seems to be something wrong. Is there? Because of the Heavenly Tao signal blocker. Death Heavenly Tao couldn't predict the arrival of danger. It was just the blink of an eye. A sharp claw had already pierced through the ceiling. Then, that figure swiftly jumped out of the hole, picked up the Buddha Golden Lotus, and ran. Chapter 13:18. The Grey Mist Lord was extremely fast. Digging the ground had always been his specialty. His claws could even break through the barriers of the spiritual space, let alone this mere soil. With the Golden Buddha Lotus, the Grey Mist Lord quickly retreated. He quickly dug a tunnel and escaped to a place called Heaven's Summit in an instant. He then aimed his claws at the void of space. That strand of chaotic energy surged out from the tip of the claw, distorting space and rapidly breaking open the space barrier. Together with the Golden Buddha Lotus, he stepped into it. Everything had happened too suddenly, and Grey Mist Lord, who had suddenly broken into the underground cellar, had swiftly disappeared with the Golden Buddha Lotus. Neither Audra nor Death Heavenly Tao had time to react. This is the marmot Ling Jinren dealt with. Death Heavenly Tao frowned. Senior, you don't seem to have noticed anything strange. There's no mistaking it. His appearance must have caused the restrictions on Earth to resonate, giving rise to the Heavenly Tao's signal shielding. Death Heavenly Tao didn't expect to encounter such a thing. In fact, it wasn't just him, even Crispy Noodles Tao Monarch hadn't reacted. The Avatar was also a manifestation of the Heaven's Path mystic art. He's too cunning. He actually used the restrictions left behind by the Tao ancestor. Death Heavenly Tao secretly blamed himself. And at that moment, Wang Ling appeared here. Because of the Heavenly Tao signal jamming. The aura of the groundhog quickly disappeared from Earth. In the end, Wang Ling was still one step too late. In a situation where the other party's Heaven's Path signal was blocked, it was no longer practical to use Heaven's Path techniques to track him. Even Tyrant's Buddha Golden Lotus was formed by the Heavenly Tao. Therefore, the possibility of Tyrant locating the Buddha Golden Lotus was very small. Wang Ling frowned. He had to think of another way to find her as soon as possible. Shifu, what should we do now? Ah Zhuo was very anxious. It was his duty to protect the girl. Who would have thought that this sly groundhog would be able to find a loophole? Wang Ling's gaze was fixed on the spot where Lotus Sun had disappeared. He carefully observed the 2 holes that had appeared in the cellar and poured his spiritual energy into them. His gaze quickly moved through the tunnel, however, this groundhog was very cunning. In the process of escaping, he used the power of spatial movement many times to travel back and forth. As a result, the tunnels became a maze. As far as Wang Ling could see, there was nothing. The groundhog and the golden lotus were nowhere to be found. However, it wasn't as if there were no clues. Among the many tunnels that Grey Mist Lord had dug out, Wang Ling spotted the afterimage of a Buddha Golden Lotus. Is it a clue left by Nguyen? Wang Ling immediately understood. In the instant that the groundhog swept up the Buddha Golden Lotus and fled, Wang Nguyen used the power of her Shadow Dao to capture the shadow of the Buddha Golden Lotus. If he hadn't learned the Shadow Dao long ago, he definitely wouldn't be so sensitive to an afterimage. Ah Nguyen had made a great contribution again. Grey Mist Lord thought that he had used the restriction left behind by the Dao ancestor to trigger the Heavenly Dao signal shielding mechanism so that Wang Ling couldn't track him down. However, the groundhog never expected this. The power of the great Dao that he had mastered. It wasn't just the Heavenly Dao. After the space jump, the Grey Mist Lord landed on the top of the sky. However, the young girls still felt that the space they were in now was different from before. What did you do? Lotus Sun asked in the Buddha Golden Lotus. In all honesty, the aura emanating from this groundhog struck her with a sense of immense pressure. If it wasn't for the protection of the Buddha Golden Lotus, Lotus Sun felt that she might not be able to withstand this kind of oppressive aura. Your tone is neither servile nor overbearing. Aren't you afraid at all? Grey Mist Lord held the Buddha Golden Lotus in his claws and sneered. There's nothing to be afraid of. Lotus Sun said, I believe that classmate Wang Ling will come to save me. There's no way he'll find you. Grey Mist Lord scared and shook his head at the young girl. It looks like you haven't realized how serious the problem is. Then what on earth are you trying to say, senior? Lotus Sun frowned slightly and asked politely. To be honest, I did want to capture you at first and use you as a hostage. Then I would blackmail that peeping dog into submission. But the moment I caught you, I changed my mind. The groundhog sneered. You're a child of the void, right? Also, because you've been resurrected too many times, you've triggered the Dao ancestors' restriction, causing your presence to gradually disappear. That's why this monk created this golden lotus and sealed your soul inside. Hearing this, the young girl's expression froze slightly. Am I right? Grey Mist Lord chuckled. This monk's golden lotus contains the cultivation of 100 lifetimes. It can indeed be used to delay the Dao ancestors' resurrection restriction so that your presence won't disappear for the time being. As for them, they just need to find a way to resurrect you as soon as possible and return you to your physical body. That way, the resurrection restriction won't continue to be triggered. Then, what else do you know, senior? Lotus Sun asked. I also know that the resurrection restriction was actually reactivated the moment I caught you. Grey Mist Lord said, back then, in order to restrict my abilities, the Dao ancestor forbade me from causing trouble on Earth. As long as I'm on Earth, all the restrictions will be strengthened. Among them is the resurrection restriction. Because of my existence, this resurrection restriction has also been affected by my resonance and has become even stronger. This monk's golden lotus is no longer effective. You mean that my presence will continue to disappear, right? Lotus Sun asked. Yes. The gray mist lord sighed. When your sense of existence completely disappears, everyone who knows you on this earth will forget you. As for me, as long as I carry you with me, I'll also be affected by you, and those who know me will also forget me at the same time. I understand. Senior, you're afraid of being beaten up by classmate Wang Ling. Afraid that he'll catch up to you. The young girl couldn't help laughing. Shut up. Grey Mist Lord sneered. Are you still pretending to be calm even now? You're really stubborn. As if Lotus Sun had touched its sore spot, the groundhog started to chatter endlessly about the current situation to the young girl. It wanted the young girl to see reality. When your presence completely disappears, you won't exist at all. When that happens, you'll suffer more if you live than if you were dead. Are you still delusional enough to think that that kid will come and save you? Grey Mist Lord said, and haven't you noticed? I took you with me and jumped through space. The Earth a second later. You can actually tell. That's right. This is the Earth a second later. That is to say, the space the kid is in right now is 1 second later than ours. The space is different, and your presence has completely disappeared. Even if you scream yourself hoarse, no one will come to save you. After saying that, Grey Mist Lord wanted to laugh out loud, but the more he thought about it, the more he felt that something wasn't right. That wasn't right. This girl wasn't particularly strong. How could she see through his space jump technique? At that moment, the groundhog realized its blind spot. Chapter 13-19. As Wang Ling's figure disappeared from the underground seclusion cellar, Audrey suddenly felt dizzy. Oh no, why does my head suddenly hurt so much? Next to him, Death Heavenly Dao had the same reaction, and the two of them slid to the ground with their backs against each other. But the headache quickly disappeared. They sat down on the ground dejectedly. Questions kept popping up in their minds. Why were they here? What on earth were they doing? Senior Death Heavenly Dao. Do you feel like we're forgetting something? I do. Death Heavenly Dao nodded. He crossed his arms as he sat cross-legged on the ground, lost in thought, but couldn't remember what on earth he had forgotten. Audrey carefully observed his surroundings. Because part of his memory was missing, a lot of things couldn't be pieced together. He didn't even know why he had appeared in Battle Sect's seclusion cellar. Why is there such a big hole in the ceiling? Who could have stabbed it? Such a big hole, who would stab it for no reason? There's one in the sky and one on the ground. Didn't Ling Jinren just leave? Maybe he did it, Death Heavenly Dao said. That's true. Audrey nodded. That makes sense. My Shifu is big everywhere, so it's not strange for him to stab such a big hole. Death Heavenly Dao, what do you mean, Audrey? I mean my Shifu's fists are big. Death Heavenly Dao, they fell into a long silence. After thinking it over, Audrey and Death Heavenly Dao finally felt that their memories couldn't be strung together. They seemed to have forgotten something, or rather, they had forgotten someone. Let's go out and take a look. Maybe we'll remember it soon. Also, Shifu was so anxious just now, so I think something must have happened. Let's see if we can help. Audrey got up at that moment. He stretched out his hand and said, Sword. Summoned, an emerald green crystal bamboo sword turned into a stream of light and fell into Audrey's hand. The moment he grasped the sword, Audrey felt like he had been electrocuted all over. Prediction, what do you want to say to me? He asked as he held up the second sword in the world. A string of words gradually appeared on the body of Prediction, fate will tell you, the moment you see these words, you will find your lost memories. In an instant. Information instantly poured into Audio's mind from Forecast's body. So that's how it is. In a flash, Audio understood. What did you think of? Death Heavenly Tao asked. He still couldn't figure it out. I thought of something I forgot. Audio smiled foolishly, as happy as a child. He actually had a lot of things to do now. Therefore, he had to remind himself at all times. Using the power of prediction, Audio made copies of everything he needed to do on his sword spirit in case he forgot. It was Audio who had engraved the words that had appeared on Prophet just now. As long as he saw this string of words, he would be able to recall a specific memory. The resurrection restriction would weaken the girl's sense of existence and make everyone around her forget about her. That was right. However, the groundhog had miscalculated in the end. Sword spirit, they were not human. On the other side, 1 second later on Earth, at the top of the sky. Before the Palm Cliff. This was the most famous tourist attraction on the summit of heaven. There was a vast ocean in front of the cliff, and one could see the horizon and the sunrise. The fracture in front of the cliff was very strange, with 5 curved, wavy fingerprints. Rumor had it that the ocean in front of the palm cliff had been created by a single palm strike from an almighty. At that moment, the Grey Mist Lord was still wondering why the girl could see through his spatial jump. How did you know? His gaze was solemn as he stared at the girl in the golden lotus. She was a Foundation establishment cultivator. She shouldn't have been able to see through space. More importantly, the Grey Mist Lord realized that Lotus Sun had remained unusually calm and collected ever since he had abducted her. The girl's body was trembling uncontrollably because of the aura he gave off. But she didn't show the slightest hint of fear. Impossible. You're not a true son of the void yet. Although you have enormous potential. As long as you haven't returned to the void, you won't be able to obtain the enormous power of the void. The Grey Mist Lord kept thinking. So, there's no way you could have seen through my spatial jump. Senior, haven't you noticed? Lotus Sun calmly asked as she sat on the Buddha's golden lotus. She raised her glowing eyes and looked in a certain direction. Only then did the groundhog realize something. The shadow of the golden lotus was actually an afterimage. Although the shadow of the golden lotus was incomplete, it was still illuminated by the light. At that moment, the shadow of the golden lotus was very long. And on this afterimage, 3 lines of words had been carved. This was a note that the girl couldn't be more familiar with. Although it was short, it gave her a great sense of security. The groundhog's eyes twitched as he stared in disbelief at the message transmitted from the afterimage. He had no idea when it had happened. These 3 lines of words had actually been carved into the afterimage of the golden lotus. The first line was frowny face Earth 1 second later, so someone had sent this girl a message. After discovering the truth, the groundhog was terrified. His forehead was already sweating uncontrollably. Then, he continued reading the first line. The second line was frowny face don't be afraid, don't be afraid. Was this telling the girl not to be afraid? No wonder she had been so calm from beginning to end. Finally, the third line. This was also the third line that made the groundhog tremble with fear. The most frowny face I'm coming, who wants to come? At that moment, the sweat on the groundhog's body had already gathered into a small river at his feet. This was the Earth 1 second later. Furthermore, he had been affected by the radiation from Lotus Sun's disappearing presence. Logically speaking, there shouldn't be anyone left who remembered them. That was the groundhog's plan. As long as he continued to hide with the girl in the Earth 1 second later. Before long, he would be able to travel back as he pleased. He would turn into a terrifying and mysterious creature in the gray fog. Impossible. No one can find this place. No one. The groundhog roared. At that moment, a fourth line of words appeared on the afterimage of the golden lotus. It was still written by Wang Ling. It was a beautiful thin golden body. The fourth line, frowny face, I'll kill you again. When the groundhog saw this, he was scared out of his wits. He stretched out his claws and tried to flee. Since the earth 1 second later wouldn't work, then he would delay it for a few more seconds. He didn't believe that Wang Ling could find him. He swung his claws at the air. The space jump happened again. Success! At that moment, the groundhog heaved a sigh of relief. But after he calmed down, he realized that something wasn't right with his surroundings. This wasn't the top of the world he had been in at all. Don't waste your energy. I already knew that you could jump. At that moment, Wang Ling appeared and stared at him from behind as he spoke telepathically. I get it. You set up a space trap and reverse time. As long as I jump, I'll return to the past. The gray fog lord broke out in a cold sweat. But the time you adjusted isn't right. It doesn't look like the Earth 1 second earlier. Wang Ling shrugged. This certainly wasn't the Earth 1 second earlier. Because from the very beginning, he had never intended to correct the time back. After all, this was still Earth. Whether it was the Earth 1 second earlier or the Earth 1 second later, it wouldn't be good to make a move. So Wang Ling had adjusted the time back by 1 billion points. This is the Earth of 4 billion years ago. At that moment, Wang Ling stared at the groundhog in front of him and cracked his neck. 4 billion years ago. The groundhog's astonishment at that moment couldn't be described in words. God-destroying blow, Wang Ling didn't waste any words. Another palm landed on the groundhog's body. The originally flat ground in front of him was instantly struck by Wang Ling's palm, and underground water rose up. The surging tide continued to converge, forming a vast ocean. 4 billion years later, this place became one of the most famous tourist attractions on Earth, Palm Cliff of the Sky. Chapter 1320. 4 billion years later, in the Palm Cliff of Heaven. Everything returned to the right track. It was already Monday morning, November 30th. On the horizon ahead, the eastern dawn had already arrived, and the sun had just risen. Dawn gradually broke. When the first ray of sunlight hit Wang Ling's face, what he was stepping on was a dead and incomplete marmot fossil, student Wang Ling. The girl's excited voice came from the golden lotus. I knew you would come. Yes. The red light of the rising sun reflected on Wang Ling's face, concealing his complexion. He picked up the marmot fossil on the ground and shook off the dust. Classmate Wang Ling, thank little sister Nguyen for me. The girl smiled. She was well aware that although Wang Ling had been the one to end this battle, he had been the one to do so. But there were other people she needed to thank. Wang Ling nodded and was a man of few words. He snapped his fingers. The golden Buddha lotus was teleported back to the war sect. At that moment, Odd Jua and Death Heavenly Tao were reflecting on themselves in the true venerated Great Hall. They hadn't been able to carry out Wang Ling's task well, because the protection was inadequate. That's why he took the initiative to kneel in the true sovereign's Great Hall to offer a humble apology. What happened? Why is Elder Jua kneeling? I don't think there's anything I'm interested in. Was it the true sovereign who punished him? That's the weird part. Lord True Sovereign did not punish him, but Elder Jua took the initiative to come here and beg for forgiveness. At the entrance of the hall, many meddlesome disciples came to join in the fun. What are you looking at? At the door, Fang Xing crossed his arms and berated him. Take another look and make another Huanggang secret scroll. A few of the male disciples left with their faces flushed red. No one knew if it was because of shame or because the other party had woken up. Ever since the matter of him becoming a woman had spread throughout the battle sect, this kind of thing had happened from time to time. Feng Xing had only attracted the attention of a lot of female disciples earlier, but now even male disciples were looking at him. This made Feng Xing very vexed. "Get up, the two of you." Classmate Wang Ling didn't say anything. Leaning against the door frame, Feng Xing stared at the scene in the hall, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. It could only be said that whether it was Odd Shuo or Death Heavenly Dao, their desire to live was too strong. It was fine if he took the initiative to ask for forgiveness. Feng Xing was directly stupefied at this operation. "No. Although Master didn't blame me, I can't let myself go. It's all because my cultivation is not high enough and my reaction is not fast enough." Odd Shuo did his best to reflect. At that time, even if Death Heavenly Dao couldn't react because of the Heavenly Dao signal shielding restriction, I had already sensed something unusual. If only I had protected Lotus Sun earlier. It wouldn't have turned out like this. No. Although Ling Jinren doesn't blame me, I can't let myself off. It's all because I didn't prepare enough and didn't anticipate the danger in advance. Death Heavenly Dao sighed. The two of them reflected on themselves in the main hall and loudly stated their mistakes, as if they were afraid that others could not hear them. Feng Xing found it funny. A few more minutes passed. A streak of golden light flew in from outside the window. The Golden Lotus Buddha had returned. It could only be said that Ling Jinren was truly Ling Jinren. Saving a sheep from the tiger's mouth, this kind of operation could only be described as awesome. Death Heavenly Dao was overjoyed. Neither he nor Odd Shuo was surprised by this result. As soon as the Enlightened One made a move, one would know whether or not there was one. How could a mere groundhog stir up any waves? However, Death Heavenly Dao felt that Odd Shuo was a lot more excited than he had imagined. Seeing the Golden Lotus return, Odd Shuo couldn't contain his excitement. With tears in his eyes, he threw himself at it. "Senior Odd Shuo, what's wrong, Carrot?" Lotus Sun was startled by Odd Shuo's reaction. This was the first time she had seen Odd Shuo lose his composure like this. Holding the Golden Lotus in his hands, Odd Shuo burst into tears. "Master's wife. You're finally back." The girl's face turned red, and the blush quickly spread to her ears. Even her snow-white neck was red. Who's your master's wife?" After calming down, Odd Shuo thought about it and felt that he had indeed called her a little too early. It hadn't been decided yet, but he didn't regret crossing paths. At the very least, he had tested out the girl's intentions. If she didn't have those intentions towards their Shifu. Why was she blushing? "Sorry, Junior Lotus Sun, I was too excited." Having succeeded in his trick, Odd Shuo smiled like a sly old fox. It's not your fault. In the future, don't call me that." Lotus Sun kept fanning her face. But this time, it would probably take a very, very long time for her face to cool down. In the forsaken land of the gods, Wang Ling casually threw the marmot's remains to the ground. Seeing that the marmot was dead, the green tong cat's eyes lit up. "As expected of you. Is the contract established?" Wang Ling asked expressionlessly. "Yes. Ling Jinren, don't worry. From now on, I'll take all of Miss Sun's souls. With me, she won't suffer any grievances or danger. Just as we agreed." The green tong cat said. Wang Ling nodded in satisfaction. Looking at the remains of Grey Mist Lord's remains on the ground, he actually still had some doubts in his heart. To be honest, the marmot was indeed a difficult opponent. It was hard for Wang Ling to imagine that it could be resurrected so many times in perfect condition. He had rewound time to 4 billion years ago and killed the marmot. The marmot's aura had indeed disappeared from the universe. But Wang Ling still felt that there was more to this matter. I know what Ling Jinren is thinking. Rest assured, he's indeed dead. The Green Tong Cat said, before Ling Jinren's final palm strike, he actually still had a few lives left. But because Ling Jinren rewound time, that wasn't the time when Tao Ancestor had given him the privilege of resurrection, so he didn't come back to life. Hearing this, Wang Ling finally breathed a slight sigh of relief. The marmot incident had finally come to an end. Tomorrow was Tuesday, December 1st, which was when Di Chio would be upgraded. Wang Ling planned to go to the Dead Bone Desert to take a look at Monk Golden Lamp's Chaos Guidance device. But before he left, Wang Ling felt that there was still something he hadn't done yet, at the same time, in space. The spirit of the moon and the spirit of the earth looked at each other from afar. Spirit of the moon, I knew Ling Jinren had forgotten about me. Spirit of the earth, it's better to forget about him. Spirit of the moon nodded. That's true, otherwise, I'll be beaten every day. Look at my face, it's full of bumps and hollows. Every time he slaps me, I'm scared out of my wits. I'm much worse off than you. You're about to upgrade. Isn't upgrading to make it easier to be beaten? At that moment, the spirit of the Earth's words caused the spirits of the two planets to sink into a long silence. The spirit of the Earth sighed. To be honest, I started to fear him 4 billion years ago. Spirit of the moon. Chapter 1321. Wang Ling had a strong feeling that that stupid groundhog might still be alive. But so far, the other party's aura had indeed disappeared. After all, it was the number one divine beast under Tao Ancestor Wang. Loopy Toad had been able to escape death with its primordial spirit back then, so this groundhog might be able to do the same. But Wang Ling wasn't worried that this groundhog would continue to cause trouble. It had been destroyed 3 times in a row. It took a long time for Loopy Toad to recover from this psychological trauma. That night, Wang Ling appeared in the Dead Bone Desert. Up ahead, he saw an intricate network of guiding devices. These devices were all made of cosmic alloy. Monk Golden Lamp had traveled to countless planets to collect the materials to build these devices. Following the monk's arrangement, metal pipes were connected from end to end according to the blueprint, and were laid out densely on the surface of the desert like a spider web. The reason why the Dead Bone Desert was called this was because there was a lot of quicksand here. If an ordinary device had been laid out on top, it would have been swallowed up by the quicksand due to its weight, and then directly sank to the bottom of the desert. But this cosmic alloy was different. Not only was it extremely sturdy, it was also as light as a feather, which was perfect for laying it out in this kind of environment. Wang Ling saw it. These cobweb-like devices finally converged at a central point in the desert. That was probably where the Chaos Egg had been placed. Brother Ling. Hey. Ling Jinren is here. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Miss Ah Wan saw Wang Ling from afar. Today was Monday, and Wang Ling should have been doing homework at this time. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal knew that a large part of the reason why he had time to join in the fun now was that number 60 High was still under construction. Because of the Foundation's previous bombing, number 60 High had delayed the start of school for some time. Chua had originally estimated that the repairs would be completed on Monday. However, Headmaster Chin had high construction requirements, and Chua had to spend some time beautifying the school environment. Thus, number 60 High's holiday would last until the weekend. The real start of school was actually next Monday, which was December 7th. Of course, it wasn't like the students of number 60 High had nothing to do before the official start of school. They still had to go to Dingting for online lessons. At that moment, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's expression abruptly changed. He stretched out his arm and pulled Wang Ling aside with a gossipy expression. Brother Ling, how is Miss Lotus Sun now? I heard she was taken away by a groundhog, and you saved her. Wang Ling, To be honest, Wang Ling was very astonished because Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had been concentrating on setting up the device, and he hadn't expected him to be so well informed. Brother Ling wants to know how I got this information, right? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal laughed. Didn't you see Ding Ding? Doesn't Ding Talk have a battle sect task force? I remember pulling you in. In order to facilitate work exchanges and mutual support, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had also set up a working group and pulled in the core members of Battle Sect. Wang Ling was startled. He really didn't notice this. This was because Ding Talk had a lot of study groups. The most important thing was that Super Chin and Hirogwa had pulled Wang Ling into quite a few homework exchange groups. On the surface, they were exchanging homework, but in fact, they were copying each other. As for the Battle Sect task force that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had set up, it had been buried in the group chat. By the time Wang Ling realized it, it was already too late. Because Chua had already shared a lot about the mission in the task force. Look here, here, and here. Brother Zhua said all of them. Following chronological order, Chua posted his work experience directly in the group chat. Today's job is to visit junior sister Lotus Sun in the hospital. She's lying in the medical cabin doing sit-ups, which is really distressing. But with Shifu around, I don't think she'll run into any major problems. Today's job is to protect junior sister Lotus Sunday. With Senior Death Heavenly Dao around, I feel a lot more at ease. Because student Lotus Sun has been resurrected too many times, she seems to have triggered some sort of resurrection restriction. Her body has become transparent, and her sense of existence has decreased. Fortunately, Senior Golden Lamp took action and placed junior sister Lotus Sun in the Buddha Golden Lotus. P.S. Shifu invited Senior Golden Lamp, but Shifu has never been so attentive to a girl before, he. I feel like I've discovered some incredible secret. I accompanied junior sister Lotus Sun home to sort out her things. Senior Death Heavenly Dao used the Great Sacrifice spell to help her burn a lot of things. Only the desk and wardrobe weren't allowed to be burned. I peeked at the desk and realized that junior sister Lotus Sun was actually imitating Shifu's handwriting, he. Today's job is to accompany junior sister Lotus Sun to the domain of the gods to watch the immortals fight. As soon as Shifu appeared, he pierced through Patriarch Zhou's Dao God brain, and then used the power of his virtual image to fight the 6 Dao gods. I realized that junior sister Lotus Sun recognized Shifu's virtual image at first glance. And then, her eyes were fixed on Shifu the whole time, and she never left him. He. I can't take it anymore. Recently, I've been observing junior sister Lotus Sun's reactions when she sees Shifu. It's so interesting. My aunt laughed the whole time, and I couldn't stop. It's so good to be young. Is this what it means to be young? Today's job is to protect junior sister Lotus Sun in Battle Sect's underground seclusion cellar with Senior Death Heavenly Dao. In order to be able to recall her experiences as a soul when she returns to her body in the future, junior sister Lotus Sun has worked very hard to organize every little detail of what has happened these days in her little notebook. P.S. Selling a copy of Shifu's personal drawing by student Lotus Sunday PM required. Sob. Shifu's wife is back safe and sound. Shifu is awesome. Broken voice, looking at the messages Chua had sent in the workgroup, the corners of Wang Ling's mouth twitched. It looks like Brother Ling has also noticed. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal smiled. Actually, it was Brother Zhua who sent these messages to Talk in the space, and he was probably the only one who could see them. But Ding Talk seemed to be working with Talk a while ago, and their messages started to synchronize. Student Zhua didn't seem to realize this, and then his messages in the space were synchronized with the Ding Talk group. Wang Ling, don't worry, Brother Ling. I've already confirmed this. Brother Zhua's Ding Talk account is a smurf, and there's only one Battle Sect working group in it, so the messages he posted in the space are only synchronized here. But judging from Brother Zhuo's reaction, it looks like he hasn't realized it yet. Wang Ling, elsewhere, in Battle Sec's underground cellar. Zhuo updated his message again. He didn't post it in the space. Instead, he directly posted it in Battle Sec's working group. He deliberately wrote in his work diary in a tone that sounded like he was posting in the space. Junior sister Lotus Sun seems to be angry after I called you Shifu. She's blushing and hasn't said a word. Shifu, this is all I can help you with. Wang Ling. Chapter 1322. It had always been a label for onlookers to watch a good show. Zhuo had infiltrated deep into enemy territory, braved danger alone, and was concerned about his Shifu's marriage. He had played dumb in secret, but in reality, he was testing the waters. His methods were astonishing. Of course, there was still a long way to go on this path. Zhuo wasn't in a hurry. He had a lot of plans in mind, most of which he had wanted to realize when he was a student but hadn't been able to. As the saying went, if there was no chance, then create one. Zhuo was waiting for this matter to be over before he pulled Lotus Sun into Battle Sec's working group. When that time came, he would be able to use work as a pretext to take his junior sister to cause trouble. At that moment, there were still 3 hours left until Tuesday, December 1st. Wang Ling saw that Monk Golden Lamp was almost done setting things up in the Dead Bone Desert. Everything was now ready except for the final push. Wang Ling saw the monk's egg in the center of the cluster of devices. The eggshell was patterned with a purple pattern and had a crystalline texture, which gave off an aura of primal chaos. Furthermore, it was astonishingly dense. After his fight with the marmot, Wang Ling had a deeper understanding of the power of primal chaos. At the same time, he understood how powerful it was. If it hadn't been for the layer of primal chaos fog around its body, the marmot would have died long ago. He didn't need to use any serious palm techniques at all to easily deal with it. But with this layer of gray fog, Wang Ling's ordinary palm strength really wouldn't be able to hurt the marmot. So in theory, if he kept using ordinary palm techniques to slap the marmot, disregarding the consumption of the power of primal chaos, the marmot should be able to receive an infinite number of slaps, but unfortunately, there were no ifs. Because no one could receive so many slaps from Wang Ling in their lifetime. This monk's 10 slaps was already the highest record. Wang Ling felt that it would be very difficult for anyone to break through in the coming days. This day has finally come. The monk looked at his masterpiece and was filled with emotion. It hadn't hatched successfully in 300 lives, and now it finally had a chance to hatch while Earth was undergoing its tribulation. Can't you be sure what will hatch? Wang Ling asked curiously. Yes, Ling Jinren. The monk nodded and narrowed his eyes at the chaos egg in front of him. Before it hatches, it's impossible to guess what will come out of the primal chaos egg. No one knows the final combination of the chaos sequence before it breaks out of its shell. After the monk finished speaking, Wang Ling fell silent. Because he had already seen what was inside the chaos egg, the monk quickly caught the look in his eyes. Immortal. Did you see something? Wang Ling didn't say anything, and just patted the monk on the shoulder with a meaningful expression on his face. The secrets of heaven must not be revealed. He had used the king's eye to spy on secrets, but that was also because of the rules. Although he already knew the answer, there was no way he would tell the monk. Otherwise, it might change the law of causality, and lead to some unnecessary disasters. This penniless monk understands. If the perfected one is unwilling to say, then this penniless monk will not ask further. The monk was an open-minded person. When he saw the glint in Wang Ling's eyes, he knew that it wasn't convenient to reveal this matter. At the same time, he was astonished. In the end, the power of Wang Ling's king's eye was beyond his imagination. After all, it was a divine item that did not belong to the Tao. It could even penetrate the primal chaos gene sequence. One had to know that before the chaos egg officially hatched, there could be as many as 1,000,000,000,000 combinations of the chaos sequence. This was definitely not something a normal human could calculate. But Wang Ling had actually seen through it at a glance. As expected of Ling Jinren, the monk felt ashamed of his inferiority. He really wanted to know the result, but the truth was that he didn't care that much about the result itself. No matter what was in the egg, the monk would accept it all. After all, he had already invested 300 years of blood and sweat into it. The monk felt that he had been a little unethical when he had used the earth to undergo a tribulation to hatch the egg. He was already grateful that Wang Ling didn't blame him. The monk just hoped that the thing that popped out of the egg wouldn't be too strange. Battle Sect, Seclusion Cellar, Room 331. Looking at the image on the screen, the girl in the golden lotus asked, "Senior Audjua, what on earth is in the egg?" Because the original room 328 had been damaged and was currently being repaired, Audjua could only take Lotus Sun to a new room. It's hard to say. After all, Senior Golden Lamp spent 300 lifetimes to hatch it. Audjua rubbed his chin and said, "Does Senior Death Heavenly Dao know what's inside?" I'm afraid that Ling Jinren is the only one who knows this secret before it officially hatches. Death Heavenly Dao said, "It's like Schrodinger's cat. You won't know what's inside the egg until the moment it's born. For example, when Miss Sun gives birth, you won't know whether the child is a boy or a girl until the moment it's born. Otherwise, anything is possible. Don't use me as an example." Lotus Sun protested. Cough, Senior Death Heavenly Dao is right. Audjua cleared his throat and said, "But judging from my Shifu's eyes, I think it might be a treasure." I can clearly see the astonishment in Shifu's eyes. An astonished expression. You mean classmate Wang Ling? Lotus Sun was full of questions. But why do I only see classmate Wang Ling's dead fish eyes? He. Junior sister Lotus Sun, are you usually too embarrassed to look my Shifu in the eye? Audjua smirked. Of course not. The girl hadn't expected him to see right through her. Her face, which had just calmed down, started to burn up again. Junior sister Lotus Sun, if you want to understand my Shifu, you can start with me. I'm an informant for free. In any case, you're now a soul. Once you return to your body, you won't remember anything. You can ask me anything you want. Lotus Sun, Senior Joie. I realize that you've become bad. It's not that I've become bad, but that on the path of learning, one should not be ashamed to ask questions. This is what I've always preached to the children as the general administration of 100 schools. Don't be afraid when you run into trouble, you must ask Shifu. Understand? After saying that, Audjua chuckled. You only see my Shifu's dead fish eyes, which proves that you're still too young. If you want to discern what on earth my Shifu's eyes are expressing and what kind of feelings he's expressing, you have to start with the details. The girl didn't reply, but was in fact already secretly taking notes in her little notebook. For example, when Shifu is surprised, his right eyebrow will involuntarily tremble. When Shifu is angry, his face will darken and his eyebrows will be lowered. Some of his hair will float up slightly. Also, when Shifu expresses his love. Yes. Audjua said, it's only when he expresses his love that I still haven't figured out. For example, when Shifu is eating his favorite crispy noodle snack, he's always expressionless, without even a slight expression. Is that so? Lotus Sun nodded. She felt that she had learned a lot of useful information. The expression of this emotion is very vague. It's also very hard to define. Junior sister Lotus Sun has to work hard. Audjua said. Me? He. Chapter 13:23. There was less than an hour before Earth's tribulation. In the Dead Bone Desert, Huaxiao Alliance and Battle Sect dispatched guards and sect disciples to patrol the edge of the desert and set up a high-altitude restriction to prevent cultivators from flying through the desert. Attention, all units. In half an hour, evacuate all patrols to a safe area 1,000 li away as quickly as possible. Don't linger around. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal looked up at the sky and gave instructions using the collective telepathy spell. The impact and destructive power of the chaotic force was incomparably huge. Even if it was just the power of radiation, it was not something that ordinary cultivators could withstand. Therefore, other than the core members, all the patrolling personnel had to evacuate before the tribulation. I'm so nervous. I'm so nervous. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal rubbed his hands. Huaxiao Alliance had given him full authority to command Earth's tribulation upgrade this time. This was a serious matter, and Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal didn't want to disappoint the head of state. Whether or not their battle sect could obtain a decisive position in the international cultivation circle depended on this wave. It's very strange. Why were the heads of state able to approve Earth's upgrade so quickly this time? Loopy Toad suddenly said at that moment. On the side, Little Silver replied, I heard from Grenade Throwing that all the countries have in fact been thinking about upgrading Earth for a long time. But he had never found a way. Now that we have Divine Tao Star's help, we naturally agree. Why is Brother Dog here? Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal asked as he looked at this familiar emerald green figure. I'm about to become a holy beast, but there's still a big gap between a holy beast and a divine beast. It should be an excellent opportunity to watch a divine beast hatch from a close distance, Loopy Toad replied. A holy beast can evolve into a divine beast. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was startled. In theory, yes. It's just a matter of physical fitness. If a spirit beast wants to evolve into a holy beast, it has to learn how to refine its primordial chi and integrate it into its bloodline. Finally, the blood in its body will be transformed into the blood of a holy beast. Only then can it complete its evolution. At this moment, Monk Jean Deng nodded. And if a holy beast wants to evolve into a divine beast, it's essentially the same. It needs to have enough physical qualities to accept the power of chaos. But it is a very difficult thing to do. Not even Devil King? Asked Loopy Toad. You mean the king of the sacred beasts, the Rakshasa king. If he reached the level of the king of holy beasts, he might be able to give it a try. However, ever since the incident with the sacred beast, this penniless monk remembers that Rakshasa King's spirit has been declining day by day, and he no longer wants to improve. His physique isn't as good as before. If he tries to fuse with the chaotic force, there's a high chance he'll die. Tyrant deduced. Hearing this, the crowd was baffled. Elsewhere, in Battle Sect's underground seclusion cellar, Odd was introducing the other core members of Battle Sect to the girl. Lotus Sun already knew all of the people who had stayed behind to guard the mountain gate. The remaining core members were all gathered in the Ghost Bone Desert. The image on the screen showed everyone, which made it much easier for Oddjua to point them out. Do you see that barefoot silver-haired one? He's called Little Silver. It was a saint beast. He had been taken in by his master a long time ago. And she's always sticking to Shifu. As Oddjua introduced them, he also observed the girl's reaction. However, the girl's reaction was calmer than Oddjua had imagined. Do you like sticking to classmate Wang Ling? Actually, this was normal. Classmate Wang Ling had always been very popular. By the way, where does Miss Little Silver live? What is junior sister Lotus Sun trying to do? It's nothing, I just wanted to send some gifts and say hello. Thank you, Miss Little Silver, for taking care of classmate Wang Ling all this time. Although the girl still had a generous and decent smile on her face, there was clearly something wrong with her tone. Audra felt that if he didn't explain this clearly, things might get out of hand. How was this asking for his address and giving him a gift? It clearly looked like she wanted to send him a razor blade. At that moment, Audra coughed slightly. Cough, cough. Junior sister Lotus' son, Little Silver, is actually a boy. As soon as he said this, the seclusion room fell into a brief silence. A few seconds later, the girl's expression clearly improved, and she covered her little mouth in surprise. He's so beautiful, he's actually a boy. Lotus' son covered her little mouth in slight surprise. Indeed, Little Silver has always been mistaken for a girl. When he went to the Wong family's small villa, he even mistook his grandmaster for someone else, Audra said with a smile. I also thought he was a girl just now. He, junior sister Lotus' son, don't you feel relieved? Lotus' son realized. This senior of hers was getting more and more sophisticated. Furthermore, it could be described as impossible to guard against. AI, young people nowadays. Death Heavenly Tao also sighed at that moment. Senior, why do you sound so resentful? Audra couldn't help asking. I just think that nowadays, gender doesn't mean everything. I think that if you like someone, you should take the initiative in time. You should know that there are more male cultivators than female cultivators in Huashu Nation, so nowadays, it's not necessarily female cultivators who are fighting over Dao partners with female cultivators, but male cultivators as well. Lotus' son, Audra, Sr. I feel like you're hinting at something. Am I? Death Heavenly Tao was completely unaware. Audra, I think I might have led you into a ditch, he. Death Heavenly Tao, ? It had to be said that Death Heavenly Tao was an honest man. He actually didn't have any bad intentions, he had really just been led into a ditch by Audra. He had said a lot of things in line with Audra's point of view, and didn't have any other thoughts. But Audra's ability to lead was really too strong. Even Death Heavenly Tao himself hadn't expected the girl in the Golden Lotus to blush after hearing what he said. As a master of rhythm, Audra had already achieved his initial goal. Even Heavenly Tao had been led into a ditch by him. It was likely that more and more people would fall into it in the future. He. On the other side, Wang Ling was paying close attention to what was going on at the scene. He had in fact had another reason for asking Lord Ma to call Loopy Toad here. After Loopy Toad had been teleported here, Survival Heavenly Tao was the only one left in the Wong family's small villa, drawing talismans in a lonely and cold manner. Do you feel it too? Wang Ling asked telepathically at that moment. That's right. Loopy Toad nodded. It could sense that there was an extremely powerful soul floating around in the nearby space. That was right, this soul wasn't anything else, it was that stupid groundhog. This guy hadn't been resurrected from the forsaken land of the gods. Instead, it had deliberately kept itself in soul form. Its goal was already very clear. It wanted to seize the body of the divine beast in the chaos egg the moment it broke out of its shell. What a stupid groundhog. Loopy Toad couldn't help laughing. You'll have to rely on yourself. I won't help you, Wang Ling said telepathically at that moment. In fact, he had called Loopy Toad here to benefit it. But for some reason, Wang Ling couldn't help it in this matter. Don't worry, little Master Ling, I'm determined to get this mere soul remnant. Loopy Toad smiled confidently. This groundhog's little tricks were all leftovers from back then. Chapter 1324. Loopy Toad couldn't be more familiar with the method of using a primordial spirit to escape back then. Now that he thought back to it, he was even feeling a little sympathetic toward the spirit of the groundhog that was wandering nearby. That was because they were pitiful people who had been repeatedly killed several times. Wang Ling's label as a friend of animals couldn't be taken off. The only difference was Wong Ling and Loopy Toad were each other's childhood shadows. Between Wong Ling and the groundhog, the latter was the most traumatized. He didn't want to alert the enemy. Loopy Toad saw that Wong Ling had already left. Sure enough, its choice back then was correct. Although he had been repeatedly killed by Wong Ling several times. But with Wong Ling, there was indeed meat to eat. Earth's tribulation was about to begin. Loopy Toad calculated the time. There were currently less than 15 minutes left. However, it had already accurately sensed a certain soul that was lurking there, ready to make a move, on the other side, on a sand dune in the undead desert. The Grey Mist Lord stared at the core area in front of him that was about to be hit by chaos. Yes. He wasn't really dead, although his physical body was destroyed, his soul managed to escape. Wong Ling was too scary. To put it nicely, he had adjusted the time by billions of points. In the end, he was brought to Earth 4 billion years ago and beaten up. The privilege that the Tao ancestor had left him was indeed to revive in full condition. However, after a certain number of revivals, he would lose control of the revival point. He had to go through the forsaken land of the gods, and the Green Tong Cat could confirm his next resurrection location. And the Ching Tong Cat in the forsaken land of the gods didn't like him. It would definitely send him to that terrifying youth's side. At that time, even if he really resurrected, it would be a waste. So, after weighing the pros and cons, the Grey Mist Lord made a bold decision. He decided to stay in his soul state. There was no need to revive so quickly. However, in his soul state, his combat strength would be greatly reduced. Moreover, as time passed, his strength would also weaken. A total of 4 billion years had passed. Currently, his soul energy was already extremely weak. But fortunately, everything in front of him gave the Grey Mist Lord hope. He saw a chaos egg that was about to break out of its shell. As long as he took advantage of the moment the new mythological beast broke out of the eggshell, he would be able to complete the possession. He could become a brand new mythological beast. In this way, he had a new body. Not only would he be able to recover his strength, but he would also be able to get rid of that groundhog body that had been bothering him for a long time. It had to be known that the monk's egg hadn't even hatched in 300 lifetimes. Needless to say, there were definitely very rare and precious divine beasts inside. Ah! This day has finally come. On the sand dune, the soul groundhog was extremely touched. Tears from the depths of his soul gushed out uncontrollably. He didn't have to be a groundhog anymore. However, right at this moment, the soul groundhog suddenly felt a chill run down its spine. That's not right, why is it so cold? The soul groundhog shuddered upon seeing this. When he turned around, he suddenly discovered that there was a strangely long, sticky tongue in the distance launching a surprise attack at his back. Even though the groundhog's soul was extremely feeble in its soul form, it still had the ability to react. His reaction was faster than Loopy Toad had imagined. He almost subconsciously leaned to the side to avoid Loopy Toad's surprise attack. It had been a full 4 billion years. In order to preserve the power of this remnant soul and ensure that it didn't dissipate, the groundhog had gone through many calamities. It had escaped death time and time again, and had developed an astonishing reaction ability. I can't beat it, but I can dodge it. Earth's upgrade was about to begin. In order to buy time for the soul to possess Loopy Toad, the groundhog's first reaction was naturally to avoid battle. Loopy Toad hadn't expected this groundhog to react so quickly. It clearly only had a remnant soul left. How many sneak attacks did it have to experience to develop this ability? Loopy Toad ridiculed in its heart. But it was determined to obtain this groundhog's remnant soul. This was Tao ancestor Wang's #1 mythological beast. If it could devour it, even if it was just a remnant soul, Loopy Toad's strength would increase tremendously in a short period of time. Oh no, this soul is too delicious. Loopy Toad couldn't wait any longer, its eyes full of desire. The fragrance of the groundhog's remnant soul made Loopy Toad salivate uncontrollably. Seeing the groundhog's remnant soul flee nimbly, Loopy Toad hurriedly chased after it. Don't run. Stop right there. Damn it, it's actually at this time, it was only one step away from possessing Loopy Toad's soul. The groundhog never expected to run into such a difficult enemy at this very last moment. Why was this Akita's fur green? And it was fluorescent. And it could even stick out a tongue as long as a toad's. The groundhog didn't know much about Loopy Toad's origins. But since the other party had come for its remnant soul, it clearly didn't have good intentions. There were less than 10 minutes left. As long as it could stall for time until the primal chaos strike hit, it would be victorious. When that time came, it would enter the body of this mythological beast. Even if this mythological beast was a cub, as long as it had a physical body, it would be able to summon the primal chaos gray fog. With the support of that layer of power, young Chi was able to move freely. Not to mention a mere green-furred dog. As long as it didn't run into Wong Ling, he didn't fear anyone here. However, Loopy Toad's difficulty was beyond the groundhog's expectations. Loopy Toad's soul state was already very well hidden, but this green-furred dog seemed to be able to smell it and kept chasing it. Don't run. Let me lick you. Loopy Toad ran over from a distance and swiftly stuck out its tongue in his direction, trying to suck him directly into its belly as it made a constant slurping sound. F***K. This was a licking dog. The groundhog couldn't help cursing. It had never been bullied by a holy beast like this before. The groundhog swiftly controlled its soul to dive down and hide in the sand. Loopy Toad dug a hole so quickly that it made one's hair stand on end as it relentlessly chased after it. There was an old saying about a dog catching a mouse and meddling in other people's business. The groundhog felt that it had never seen this before in its life. It never thought that this saying would actually come true for itself. It roared in its heart. Just a little more. Just a little more. Then it would have a real, brand new body. At that moment, in the sky above the dead bone desert. Whether it was the groundhog or Loopy Toad, both could already sense an indescribably massive amount of spirit power starting to converge. The primal chaos strike was about to begin. It was now officially in the countdown phase. At that moment, Loopy Toad had given up on the chase. But that didn't mean it had given up. Given the current situation, there was no point in continuing the chase. It would be better to change its strategy. Roughly another 30 seconds passed. A massive purple thundercloud gathered in the sky, and a terrifying red light erupted from within. It was like the eye of a demon staring at the earth. The chaos strike was about to begin. The monk stood in front of the chaos egg, turned his Buddha beads, and silently recited Buddhist scriptures. He raised his hand, and the chaos guidance device instantly activated. BZZT. Countless conduits instantly burst forth with golden light, and in the end, they abruptly surged toward the chaos egg at the core of the device. The monk had already tested this process over 100 times to ensure that nothing went wrong. The moment the golden light converged on the chaos egg. Kaboom! In the sky, a massive pillar of chaos light descended with destructive power. For a moment, the entire earth was shaken. The seawater churned and formed a massive tsunami, but this was a situation that had long been anticipated. Cultivators from various countries had already worked together to set up the sea-calming barrier to prevent the tsunami from eroding the earth, keeping the surging seawater outside. At the same time, the earth's crust trembled. Almost all the cultivators on Earth who were still in seclusion were alarmed by this tremor. For a moment, they all opened their eyes. This violent tremor made them feel uneasy. The spirit beasts in the forest formed a beast tide, and they rushed madly through the forest. Birds chirped and beasts roared into the sky. It was as if the entire earth was boiling over at this special and great moment. The chaos strike was just that terrifying. But all of this was still under consideration. The chaos strike was bound to cause some natural effects. But given the spells of modern cultivators and the presence of almighties everywhere, it could be prevented and controlled. Of course, if the monk hadn't made preparations in advance and used the device he had developed to guide the energy, this impact would have instantly split the earth in half like a watermelon. The terrifying impact lasted for a full 3 minutes. Then, everything returned to calm. During these 3 minutes, all the cultivators on Earth felt terrified and uneasy. The planet had upgraded. This was a famous scene that no cultivator on Earth had ever seen before. Now, with the combined support of the heads of state of various countries, Washio Alliance and Battle Sect, the Earth had withstood the pressure of this massive chaos catastrophe caused by the upgrade. Everyone was witnessing history. Is it done? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal asked excitedly. It's done. The monk opened his eyes and gave a thumbs up. The fact that the Earth had survived the chaos strike unscathed meant that the Earth had completed its upgrade. In that instant, the purple thunderclouds in the sky dispersed. Then, there was an explosion of boundless spirit chi of heaven and earth. In the blink of an eye, the entire Earth was covered in a thick layer of spirit light and immortal fog. Earth's cultivators started to cheer. One by one, they flew freely through the air on their spirit swords, breathing in this thick immortal fog which instantly nourished their internal organs. This was a carnival for all the cultivators on Earth. All the cultivators were celebrating in their own way. Near the desert of dead bones, the patrols and disciples of Battle Sect and Washio Alliance burst into thunderous applause and jubilation. At the same time, the heads of state of various countries who were closely watching the upgrade plan from a distance also burst into thunderous applause and sent congratulatory messages to the head of state of Washio Alliance's office. It really worked. Little Silver pounced on Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal excitedly and hugged him. Brother Silver, you've put on weight again. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he let Little Silver wrap around him like a koala. Everyone was very excited. There was nothing more inspiring than witnessing a successful tribulation with their own eyes. It was at that moment that Monk Goldenlamp's Chaos Egg finally reacted. Hey! Monk! Your egg finally moved. Miss Awan didn't care about Earth's upgrade at all. She had actually been looking forward to seeing what kind of mythical beast would break out of the egg. This guy, who hadn't been born for 300 lifetimes, had to be very handsome. It was sparkling. It was domineering. It was a creature that could shock people. Crack! A small crack appeared on the crystal-like body of the egg. Although they couldn't clearly see what the guy in the egg looked like, a powerful aura of primal chaos had already surged out. Congratulations, Master. This must be a rare beast. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal hurriedly congratulated him. Thank you for your kind words, Master Venerable. Let's hope this guy comes out on his own. The monk smiled. At that moment, the groundhog, which had been lurking in the desert for a long time, finally had its chance. Here's my chance. It roared excitedly and jumped out of the desert as fast as it could. On the other side, Loopy Toad also felt that its chance had come. It had given up on chasing the groundhog earlier because it had planned to stay by the Chaos Egg and wait for the groundhog to walk into its trap. But there was only one chance like this. If it didn't succeed, it would be very embarrassing. At that moment, it could already sense the strong fragrance of the groundhog's remnant soul getting closer and closer. The other party was approaching the surface at top speed. Here's my chance. The moment the groundhog's remnant soul jumped out of the desert, Loopy Toad concentrated all its energy and stuck out its long tongue. Poor guy. You've just been born, but this immortal has already taken over your body. The groundhog laughed wildly as it scuttled out of the desert and abruptly rammed its head into the chaos egg. It seemed that the monk had already anticipated this. He didn't move and didn't stop the groundhog from doing anything. Oh no! Loopy Toad's tongue didn't directly hit the groundhog. But in that instant, it still felt as if something was stuck to its tongue. Loopy Toad turned pale with fright. It immediately realized what had happened. The groundhog had succeeded in taking over the body. Furthermore, it had pushed the soul of the divine beast out of the eggshell. Its tongue was now wrapped around the soul of the divine beast that the monk had truly given birth to. I, Han-san, am back. At that moment, the groundhog that had successfully taken over the body in the eggshell was beyond excited at having seized a new body. It stretched out its claws and directly broke out of the shell. Wait! There seemed to be something wrong with the situation. Why did these claws look so familiar? They didn't seem any different from his own claws, except that they were a little smaller. But very quickly, the Grey Mist Lord realized what on earth was going on. He had racked his brains to take over the divine beast egg in the eggshell in an attempt to get rid of his body as a groundhog. But the Grey Mist Lord never expected, there was another groundhog in the eggshell. Why is it still a groundhog? Oh! At that moment, the groundhog clutched its head and roared in defeat. Chapter 1325. Life is a circle. The reincarnation of all things was another cycle. Although the monk didn't know what was inside the chaos egg, the instant the eggshell cracked open, he could predict what would happen next. The groundhog's possession had succeeded, but the monk had no intention of stopping it. As for the other marmot that had been forced out of its body, Loopy Toad had already eaten it and was digesting it. He definitely couldn't spit it out. Amitabha, everything is fate. The monk bowed and walked to the front. He didn't say anything and only stared at the groundhog's lower body. Grey Mist Lord felt a little uncomfortable under the monk's gaze. However, he felt that the monk's eyes were hinting at something. He hugged his head and followed the monk's gaze. To his surprise, he discovered that he didn't have any left. This groundhog. It was actually King female. At the thought that it would never be able to live a blissful life again, the groundhog clutched its head and let loose a long howl before its body was instantly petrified and transformed into a statue-like being. Master, this is... Grenade-throwing senior immortal was extremely astonished. He's completely isolated. Tyrant sighed and said, the divine beasts born from the primal chaos have the ability to evade the Heart Devil. They will never be invaded by the Heart Devil. Once an inner demon is born, the body will automatically enter a purification mode. Until the inner demon is completely eradicated, the body will become a chaotic sculpture like this. Having said that, the monk took out a world-defying artifact. It was a Buddhist sword. It was made up of 49 copper coins engraved with the Buddhist seal of the swastika. The monk casually slashed at the petrified groundhog. The sword clashed with the groundhog's body, and a crisp metallic clang erupted. The sword chi was bounced off and cut into the sand dune in the distance, causing a huge explosion. It's actually so hard. Everyone was astonished. The chaos sculpture is indestructible. I'm afraid that unless it's Ling Zhenren's palm strength, it's unrealistic to destroy it, the monk said. Nah, Buddhist monk, how long will it take for it to recover? Miss Ah Wan stroked the petrified groundhog's round head with a smile. The body of the female marmot that Grey Mist Lord had possessed was still in the state of a chick. Compared to the original Grey Mist Lord, which was overweight, it was only a little bigger now. From the looks of it, it was an adorable creature. So cute. Good cue. If it wasn't for the fact that I'm petrified, it would definitely feel very good. Miss F1 said. To be honest, it definitely doesn't feel as good as Master's, Little Silver said at that moment. Is Ling Jinren's face very soft? Everyone was curious. I haven't touched it, I just heard Grandmaster mention it. Little Silver remembered when he had been a guest at the Wang family's small villa. Mother Wang took out a photo of Wang Ling as a child. That face was really bouncy. Even now, he felt that Master's face was so red that water could be squeezed out of it. However, no one dared to try it, because he didn't have the guts. Sigh, I really want to pinch a real person's face. It's better if you don't court death. Master will be angry. All of a sudden, everyone's conversation shifted from the adorable petrified groundhog to the issue of face molding. The speed at which the topic changed made the monk feel amused. How about this? Since everyone is curious, why don't we make a bet? What? Monk, you're betting too. You're not a monk. I'm not betting, but this poor monk can offer you a reward. The monk smiled slightly as he casually picked up the shell of the chaos egg in front of him. The shell of a divine beast is a top-notch material for making powerful magic artifacts, and is a priceless treasure. If anyone can pinch Ling Jinren's face, this poor monk can personally customize a powerful Buddhist magic artifact for them. A magic artifact personally customized by monk Jin Dang. And made from the shell of a divine beast. I want it a little. Fine. I'll participate. I'll participate too. For a moment, many people raised their hands. It was just pinching a face. As long as the timing was right, Ling Jinren might not be angry. This was what they thought in their hearts. I don't think there's any need to restrict the registration. Everyone in Battle Sect can participate, including inner and outer sect disciples and core members. Whoever can pinch it wins. Let's do that then. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal nodded. Little Silver and Loopy Toad trembled on the side. This group of people was too bold. They really didn't want to live anymore. But by the way, what about this petrified marmot? At that moment, someone finally realized that the topic seemed to be getting further and further off track, so they directed everyone's attention back to the roaring marmot, who was holding its head in its hands and petrified. It takes time to purify one's inner demon. Grey Fog Lord waited for so long, but in the end, he still possessed the marmot's body. That's the first blow. The monk sighed and said, after successfully possessing the marmot, he discovered that his egg was empty. That's the second blow. Given the birth of an inner demon under such a double blow, he probably won't be able to wake up for a while. This poor monk and Ling Jinren are about to go to the unspeakable, and we can't take him with us. In my opinion, why don't we set up a sealing formation and move his petrified body there first? A sealing magic array. That way, once he wakes up, he won't immediately break the seal and commit crimes. Although Grey Fog Lord can still use the primal chaos fog, he's still a baby, and its power is far weaker than when he was at his peak. I see. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal nodded. Then, that's the only way. Senior Immortal, I'll have to trouble you to keep an eye on him while I and Ling Jinren go to the unspeakable, the monk said. Saying that, he took out a Vairocana Prajna Sutra scroll from his sleeve and gave it to Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal. This is the sutra for a true venerated to break through to venerated immortal. Consider it a token of my appreciation. But I'm not a Buddhist disciple. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal smiled. Realm cultivation has nothing to do with whether you're a Buddhist disciple or not. As long as you have a good heart, you're qualified to cultivate. Monk Golden Lamp smiled. In that case, thank you very much, Master. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal bowed. Elsewhere, in Battle Sect's underground seclusion cellar. Faced with Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and the others' face-pinching challenge, Audiobook didn't know whether to laugh or cry. In this world, I'm afraid no one has pinched Shifu's face except Grandmaster and Grandmaster. Junior sister, do you want to try? At that moment, Audiobook turned to look at Lotus Sunday. How can a girl casually pinch a boy's face? It has to be a very close relationship, otherwise it'll be misunderstood. Lotus Sun was instantly at a loss for words. Seeing the girl's panicked expression, Audiobook laughed in his heart. Chapter 1326. In the center of Battle Sect Central Lake, there was a tower buried in the water. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal brought the monk here and gave a detailed explanation of the tower in the water. This was designed when the sect was first established to suppress evil. Battle Sect's facilities are indeed complete. The monk nodded. In modern cultivation society, there weren't many buildings in sects that were specifically used to seal evil. This type of building was also known as a spirit suppression facility, and was mostly used in ancient times to imprison vicious beasts or extremely evil monsters. As soon as the monk saw the tower in the water, he already knew its structure. It was built at the intersection of 6 underground spirit veins, and any evil beings that were sealed within it would have almost no ability to escape. What was more, now that the earth had upgraded, the level of the underground spirit veins had also changed. The original sky veins had become god veins, and the earth veins had become sky veins. That was to say, the 6 underground spirit veins in Battle Sect's water had originally been earth veins, and now that they had been upgraded to sky veins, their power was unparalleled. The monk threw a golden bead into the lake, and the golden light penetrated the surface of the lake, causing golden ripples to appear in the center of Battle Sect. What a powerful Buddhist light! Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was astonished. This poor monk sealed this marmot's chaos sculpture in the Buddha bead. Adding on the seal of the tower in Battle Sect's water, even if he overcomes his inner demon, he won't be able to break out in the short term, said Jin Dang. He recited Buddhist scriptures and worked together with Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal to cast a spell to open the gate of the tower in the water. Then, the golden bead was immediately swallowed by the tower in the water, and the surface of the lake instantly calmed down and returned to normal. After doing all this, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Will he understand? This is a pitiful marmot, and also a stupid marmot. I believe that when this poor monk and Ling Jinren return from the unspeakable, he will understand. The monk said, redeeming himself by doing meritorious deeds and serving this poor monk and Ling Jinren is his only way out. After all, he was the #1 divine beast under Dao ancestor Wang back then. As a proud groundhog, it had become accustomed to doing whatever it wanted, so it had to choose the path of following its heart. This was a very difficult decision. However, the monk still believed that this groundhog would admit defeat in the end. After all, Ling Jinren was probably the only one who could forcefully defy the will of the heavens and change the physiological structure of a divine beast like the egg whips empty. For the sake of a happy life, he had to admit defeat. As he pondered, the monk suddenly thought of something else. Perfected Sovereign, I heard that you've captured the other 2 children of the void. Tomorrow, he would head to the unspeakable land. As for the mastermind behind the scenes of the unspeakable, he was also the target that the monk had been keeping a close eye on. Back when the groundhog had concealed itself in the gray mist, its identity hadn't been revealed yet, so it was also a suspect. However, the groundhog was no longer a suspect. Therefore, if the gap in the unspeakable land was artificially torn open, then the unspeakable land would be destroyed. The Void Master and the Fortune Teller were the biggest suspects. Before setting off, Tyrant wanted to know more clues. Yes, Jiang Xiaoche and Yi Jiang are currently in the Battle Sect. How are they doing now? They haven't given off the smell of the void from beginning to end, which is completely different from Miss Lotus Sun's situation, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said. Could there be a problem somewhere? It's indeed a little strange. The monk was also astonished. Book of Sage Immortal rarely made mistakes in its calculations. But if Yi Jiang and Jiang Shaoqie were children of the void, then they should have given off the smell of the void long ago. The monk turned his Buddha beads and pinched his fingers together to calculate. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal saw steam rise from the 6 ring scars on the top of the monk's head, which made a humming sound like the chimney of an old-fashioned train. This was a phenomenon that occurred when the monk's brain worked too fast during a complicated calculation process in order to dissipate heat. A large amount of heat would come from the 6 ring scars on the top of Monk Jin Deng's head. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal thought that if there was a wok at this time, he could make hot pot on the monk's head. It took the monk a long time to calculate. Previously, he had always suspected that the unspeakable land had something to do with the incident in the void. But now it seemed that if Jiang Shaoqie and Yi Jiang hadn't become children of the void, then the monk felt that there might be another possibility. That was, someone might have deliberately misled them. He turned his gaze to the void. And the Lord of the Void might also be someone who was being used, not good. About 5 or 6 minutes later, Monk Jin Deng raised his head, as if he had suddenly thought of something. "What's wrong, Grandmaster?" Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal asked. "Where is Miss Sun's body now?" the monk asked anxiously. "In the Great Hall of True Venerate, someone has been assigned to look after it. Let's go take a look." By the central lake, Monk Jin Deng's expression was unusually anxious. The two of them turned into 2 streams of light and swiftly approached the Great Hall of True Venerate. At that moment, the girl's body, which had been blessed, was still lying quietly in the medical cabin in the main hall. Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch was sitting cross-legged in front of the medical cabin, guarding it. When he arrived here, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal suddenly felt the figure in front of him blur, as if he was looking at Wang Ling himself guarding Lotus Sunday. After all, Crispy Noodles was Wang Ling's real clone, and the two of them looked alike. Even Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal felt that this was an illusion that happened every now and then. "Open it." Given the urgency of the situation, the monk requested Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch as soon as he landed. "Open it." Grandmaster might have thought of something. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal nodded on the side. With Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's order, Crispy Noodles Dao Monarch got up and carefully opened the cover of the medical cabin. The monk spun his prayer beads quickly in his hands, and his expression was very nervous. He hoped that his judgment had been wrong. Otherwise, this would really be a little scary. However, the moment he examined the girl's body again, the monk's entire expression changed, and his breathing almost instantly became rapid. "I was still a step too late." The monk sighed. "Grandmaster, what on earth is going on? Haven't you noticed yet?" the monk said as he looked at the girl's body. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal carefully observed the girl in the medical cabin. At first, he didn't notice anything unusual. But as he looked, he very quickly noticed something. He realized that the girl in the medical cabin actually didn't have a shadow. "I've been tricked." The monk felt a little headache coming on. If this poor monk's guess is correct, Miss Sun has a twin void physique. Twin void physique. That is to say, Miss Sun and her shadow are both children of the void, said the monk. It has something to do with Shadow Dao. It does. But Venerable Nguyen didn't do it on purpose. The monk shook his head. Looking at the current situation, it should be Miss Sun's shadow who has awakened on its own. Hearing this, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was instantly enlightened. Self-awakening, wasn't this similar to the situation with Wang Ying? Dissatisfied with the original's taunts, she had awakened her own spiritual intelligence and wanted to replace the original's. It could only be said that Miss Lotus Sun was indeed Miss Lotus Sun. Even the accident was so similar to Brother Ling's, as expected of a pair of buffoons. A perfect match. At that moment, the corners of grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's mouth twitched, and he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Chapter 13:27. When yin and yang were in chaos, so this was what he was referring to. In a daze, the monk completely understood what that fortune-teller had meant back then. They had always mistakenly interpreted yin and yang as male and female, and thought that the sons of the void were a man and a woman. But they had never expected the sons of the void to be twins. The reversal of yin and yang referred to the awakening of the shadow, which had its own thoughts. By the time they had understood, it was already too late. The problem now was that, when yin and yang were in chaos, had already been verified. So what on earth did the latter part of the sentence, "dye the blue sky with my membrane blood," mean? For some reason, the monk felt that the latter part of the sentence had some hidden meaning. What did the great master think of? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal asked at that moment. No, nothing. The monk's old face turned red. This matter is very important. This poor monk has to discuss it with Ling Jinren, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, ? In the Wang family's small villa, Wang Ling quickly received the monk's feedback. A son of the void with a twin constitution. Even Wang Ling hadn't expected this. But this confirmed his initial guess even more. All along, there had been a pair of hands behind the scenes, adding fuel to the fire and guiding their actions. Lotus Sun's shadow, what should it be called? Sunning. That sounded like a boy's name. That was too uncute. Is Ling Jinren thinking of something? Seeing Wang Ling's thoughtful expression, the monk couldn't help feeling curious. The monk also had the ability to read minds, but this ability was only ineffective on Wang Ling. He could only read large swathes of mosaic. Name, Wang Ling said succinctly. Ling Jinren means that he's thinking about what a good name to give Miss Sun's shadow. Survival Heavenly Tao acted as on the side. The monk was stupefied. He couldn't help but admire Wang Ling in his heart. At a time like this, he actually still had the time to think about a name, as expected of you. At that moment, Survival Heavenly Tao still hadn't stopped drawing talismans. Furthermore, there was already no one to help him. Loopy Toad had absorbed the soul of the new female groundhog and was in the process of digesting it, so it needed to go into seclusion for a while. Lord Ma had used his teleportation ability to send it back to the demon world. Loopy Toad was now on the holy pillar in the demon world, using second-generation demon saint's seclusion room to cultivate in seclusion, with holy envoy Shen Weiyue guarding it. Only Loopy Toad could enjoy this kind of treatment. It was all for Wang Ling's sake. If other demonic beasts of the demon race dared to ride on the demon saint's neck and do things, they would have long been beaten to death. At the thought of this, Survival Heavenly Tao felt that its position was getting smaller and smaller. By the time Loopy Toad came out of seclusion, it would probably be able to ride on the Heavenly Tao's face. Their Heavenly Tao was truly too difficult. Sunning. That doesn't sound like a girl's name. The monk smiled and said, "This penniless monk has a good idea." At that moment, Wang Ling looked up at the monk, who gave his answer. Why don't we split the word shadow into 3 and Jing? Sun Sanjing, this poor monk thinks this name isn't bad. When Wang Ling heard this, even Survival Heavenly Tao next to him was startled on the spot. God. Not bad. Wang Ling thought that he was already a failure at coming up with names. He didn't expect to meet someone who was more ambitious than him. Let's call her Sunning. After thinking for a long time, Wang Ling felt that until he couldn't come up with a better answer, Sunning sounded better. At least, it was more reliable than the name Sun Sanjing. In a daze, Wang Ling recalled the author's real name. After splitting it up, he called it Jean Sancher. It was also very old-fashioned. The most important thing now is to find Miss Sun Ying's whereabouts, the monk said. The truth was that while Wang Ling was thinking of names, he had already been looking for Sun Ying. Only magic could defeat magic. Only magic could defeat magic. Naturally, only the shadow could find the shadow. Wang Ying was a natural tool, and there was no way Wang Ling wouldn't put her to use. At the same time, Wang Ling was also very curious about where on earth Sun Ying had gone. Back then, Wang Ling had already experienced Wang Ying's cruelty. Don't use your thoughts to judge our shadow's personality. Every shadow who awakens its own consciousness has a different personality. In the spiritual space, Wang Ying was crossing her arms in protest. Miss Sun Ying might be a gentle shadow. Hearing this, Wang Ling was silent. He wasn't in a hurry to refute it. In any case, as long as Wang Ying found the other party's location, he would know what kind of existence Sun Ying on Earth was. Be careful. Before separating Wang Ying from the spiritual space, Wang Ling took the initiative to warn her. He didn't think Sun Ying was Wang Ying's match. But since Sun Ying was another son of the void, it was very likely that she had already obtained all the power of the void. Shadows and hollow spirits were similar in that they both didn't have physical bodies. But sons of the void were different from ordinary hollow spirits. If Sun Ying was fully awakened, she would be much stronger than the hollow spirit who had broken into the spiritual space the last time. Wang Ying completely ignored Wang Ling's words. She turned into a black shadow and swiftly scurried into the outside world. Let's go. At that moment, Wang Ling felt that he couldn't stay idle. Are we going to the unspeakable land? The monk was startled. They had originally planned to do it tomorrow. But since they had decided to move ahead of schedule, Monk Golden Lamp naturally had no objections. Since Shinran thinks it's feasible, then this humble monk will lead the way. After saying that, the monk took out a map of the Milky Way and spread it out on the ground. There were clear coordinates for the unspeakable land on it. Ling Jinren, this is the unspeakable land. It's in the depths of the Milky Way, and there are a lot of space traps nearby. Based on this humble monk's experience of entering it many times, there are some safety details that I will need to discuss with Ling Jinren first. After saying that, the monk pointed to a dozen or so red crosses on the map. These red crosses are places that need to be bypassed. Even if you use the power of shrinking the earth to an inch, it will be very troublesome to get out if you accidentally step inside. Given this humble monk's and Ling Jinren's strength, it won't be impossible for us to get away, but in the end, it will still be a waste of time. The monk chattered on endlessly about what he thought were the safety details. At that moment, he finally showed his true nature as an old monk reciting scriptures. Shinran, please take a look, and here, and here, those places are all space storms. Once you're sucked in, your clothes will be directly gone. Previously, this humble monk fell in several times and lost a lot of kasayas. Alright, that's all for this humble monk's safety details. This humble monk will lead the way from Earth to the unspeakable land. It will take 3 days. Was there a need to go through so much trouble? Wang Ling sighed in his heart. Standing in front of his wardrobe, he silently recited the incantation. After opening the wardrobe again, the wardrobe was overflowing with starlight. It was an impressive sea of stars. And the unspeakable land, which was similar to a floating cosmic island, was right in front of Wang Ling. It would actually take 3 days to reach the unspeakable land. 3 seconds. That was enough. But now, he had already taken a whole 10 steps. The unspeakable land was clearly right in front of him, but the distance between them hadn't shortened. Interesting, Wang Ling said softly. In some sense, Dao Ancestor Wang, this restriction maniac, had also given Wang Ling a difficult problem. Dao Ancestor Wang's restriction reputation is well deserved. Back then, this poor monk fought and lost again and again. I wonder if coming here with Ling Jinren today will fulfill this poor monk's long-cherished wish of entering the unspeakable land. At that moment, the monk sighed and stared at Wang Ling. Given Jinren's strength, it shouldn't be hard for you to undo the restriction, right? The monk was testing the waters. If Wang Ling wanted to undo it, he naturally could. It was just that restrictions were very complicated, and Wang Ling had already made an analogy long ago. It was like a math problem. The best way to solve it was to work backward. But this would take a very, very long time. In fact, given the urgency of the moment, Wang Ling didn't have much time left. Too troublesome. Wang Ling shook his head slightly in response to the monk. Even Jinren finds it troublesome. The monk's face was instantly disappointed. But before he could comment further, he heard Wang Ling say, "Just directly cover it." Cover it. The monk's eyes lit up, and he turned pale with shock. Jinren, do you mean to directly cover Dao ancestor Wang's restriction? Wang Ling nodded. This was the most convenient method he could think of. The analysis process was too troublesome. It would be better to create a new restriction and replace the old one. Wang Ling stretched out his hand, and a huge reddish-gold light was released from his palm. This light covered the entire unspeakable land. About 3 minutes later, Wang Ling put down his hand. It's done. The monk was blank. It's done. Wang Ling nodded. The modification to the restriction had been completed. What did you change it to? The monk was curious. Anyone who can withstand more than 10 of my palm strikes, inclusive, can enter, Wang Ling said telepathically. If you want to devour her, seizing her body is the key. But in Battle's sect, Miss Sun has too many people protecting her. And you'll be dragged here by me, or even defeated. I'm afraid it won't be that easy for you to defeat me. Sun Yinger smiled. You probably don't know about my shadow image ability, do you? Wang Ying frowned. My shadow image is the mother of division. I can split myself into many parts. Moreover, all of my split bodies have the same amount of energy as me. That's impossible. Theoretically speaking, it's indeed impossible. Because the split bodies won't have the same amount of energy as the main body. But don't forget, I'm a child of the void. There's an inexhaustible amount of energy in the void. Sun Yinger smiled. With the power of the void, my shadow image ability has become even more astonishing. You mean? At this point, Wang Ying finally realized what the problem was. That's right, what you've been chasing is just my split body. Sun Yinger looked at Wang Ying with an expression that said she had everything under control. And my main body is still hiding on Earth. At the same time, a white-haired girl exuding a dangerous aura appeared at the gate of Battle's sect. She opened her palm, and a pure white snow lotus mixed with the power of the void appeared in her palm, spinning slightly. Rong Rong, return to the void with me. Sun Yinger's smile hit a dagger as she threw the snow lotus. In the void, the spinning snow lotus contained astonishing energy, and then it exploded, instantly illuminating the entire night sky.